All rise. The Superior Court of Guam is now in session. The Honorable Judges Catherine A. Merriman, F. Philip Carbolito, and Dana A. Gutierrez are now presiding.
You may be seated. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. We are excited to be here for the final round of the Guam High School mock trial competition. We're very happy to have the opportunity to judge the final groups of students. We'd like to begin by thanking the people who put the mock trial competition together, and that's the court, joined by our partners, the Guam Bar Association, then the Department of Education, and numerous volunteer coaches who are attorneys, usually attorneys from our community and teachers from the schools. So this is a volunteer program, but this program has resulted in several students getting interested in the law and pursuing law careers. And we're proud to have, as alumni of this program, several students, one of whom is the daughter of a friend of mine who went to Harvard Law School. Another went to Yale. So this program has produced some very well-educated and very fine lawyers. So I want to encourage you to continue to pursue your interest, if it is in the law, and best wishes to all of you. We're going to begin the competition. I know that it's normally anonymous who the teams are, but we're going to make an exception tonight because it is the final competition. So I'll ask I understand one of the teams is from the Guam High School. If you could stand and please state your name and the name of the person that you'll be portraying in the competition.
Statement, the cross-examination of Kelly Flores, and the direct examination of Sam Soto.
Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Andrew Powers. I will be a defense attorney. I will be doing the direct examination. Thank you. The direct examination of Taylor Garcia, the cross-examination of Officer Pat Santos, and I will also be delivering the closing argument.
Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Millie Cusack. I'll be doing the direct examination for Dr. Morgan Lee and the cross for Alex King.
Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Inina Tanaka, and I will be portraying Sam Soto tonight.
Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Charlotte Hoffman. I will be portraying Taylor Garcia tonight.
Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Connor Cox, and I'll be portraying Dr. Morgan Lee tonight.
Thank you. And from the Oakwood High School.
Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Ta'al Muchu. I'll be doing the opening statements as well as the direct examination of Dr. Kelly Flores and the cross-examination of Dr. Morgan Lee.
Good evening, Your Honors. My name is Micah Imbat. I'll be doing the direct for Alex King, and I'll be crossing Sam Soto.
Good evening, Your Honors. My name is Joseph Ordonez. Tonight, I will be doing the direct examination of Officer Pat Santos, the cross-examination of Taylor Garcia, and I will be conducting the closing statements.
Good evening, Your Honor. I will be playing Alex King. My name is Jordan Kalimlem.
Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Colleen Conception, and I will be portraying Dr. Kelly Flores.
Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Renan Nora, and I will be playing Pat Santos.
And I believe we have a bailiff as a clerk.
Good evening, Your Honors. My name is Chandra Augustine, and I will be your bailiff.
You. And the clerk? No clerk?
Your Honors, my name is
Thank you. Good night. Thank you. And do you have your rosters?
Yes, Your Honor, our timekeeper has just given them to you.
Okay. This is Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to inform the participants that the competition is being live streamed on the court's YouTube channel. And a recorded copy of it should be available soon after the competition ends. I'd also like to inform the participants that after the conclusion of the people's case in chief, we will take a 10-minute recess. And then after the conclusion of the defendant's case in chief, we'll take another 10-minute recess. So you can prepare your closing statements. Does anyone from Okudu wish to raise anything with the court?
Yes, Your Honors.
Yes.
The prosecution would like to request that permission to roam the world freely for both teams.
I'm sorry, I couldn't.
Oh, Your Honor, the prosecution would like to request that both teams be able to roam the world freely.
Oh, yes, that's fine.
Thank you, Your Honors. The prosecution also like to request that all witnesses be sworn in at the same time.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honors. The prosecution also like to request that any remaining time in our closing arguments be reserved for a rebuttal.
That's fine.
Thank you, Your Honor. The prosecution also like to request that pursuant to Rule 4.27 of the mock trial competition, once an exhibit has been entered the evidence, we may mark it with a dry erase marker for demonstration purposes, Your Honor.
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor. And lastly, Your Honor, would you like us to address you individually as Your Honor or the whole scoring panel as Your Honors?
The whole panel would be.
Thank you, Your Honors. And would you like us to also make our addresses towards you or the jury, Your Honor?
The jury.
Thank you, Your Honors. That is all.
Thank you. I don't know, do we have a jury? Not that I'm looking. I don't think we have a jury, so you address us. Okay. And then for the defense, does Guam High School have anything they wish to raise?
Yes, Your Honors, we have one preliminary matter that we would like to raise. Whenever we approach a witness, would you like us to ask permission once the first time, or would you like us to ask permission to approach the witness every time?
You don't have to. You can skip that step tonight.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. That is all.
Okay, I would like to ask the 6 witnesses to please stand and be sworn by the bailiff.
Please raise your right hand. Do you promise that the testimony you're about to give will truthfully and faithfully conform to the rules of the mock trial competition?
Thank you. You may be seated. We'll now begin with the opening statement of the people.
Yes, Your Honors. Death doesn't always come at the barrel of a gun or at the edge of a knife. Sometimes it comes in a small white pill left easy to reach at a summer party by someone who should have known better. Your own friend. May it please the court, counsel, and Your Honors. There will be no twists, no turns, and no surprises. Just the facts as simple as they are tragic. As we go through this case, you'll come to understand that both Brandon and Sam were close friends, staying alongside each other from college until now. And what you'll also understand is that Sam and her negligence led to the death of Brandon Bamba. At the very heart of this case is Brandon himself. He had met the defendant, Sam Soto, in college, attended the same courses, and eventually graduated together. They would take an internship at Louis and Tully, hoping to grow their business. And during this time, Brandon would unfortunately develop a drug problem. Going through rehab, he would eventually complete his program for opioid addiction. Both Brandon and Sam, now on the same track, would start holding social events to grow their business even further. Sam holding the annual 4th of July parties for not just friends and colleagues, but for clients and potential ones as well. A place that should have been comfortable for everyone quickly became a place of informal matters, where not just alcohol, but drugs flowed freely. And Brandon, who had a history of substance abuse, would have easily been able to fall back into bad habits. And that's where it hit. On the 5th of July, 2024, an entire day after attending Miss Soto's party, Brandon Bomba would be found deceased within his own home due to a fatal overdose. Now, under Guam law, any person who proximately causes the death of another by either directly or indirectly, unlawfully, exchanging or giving away a Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 controlled substance without intent to cause death is guilty of manslaughter. And the elements, as alleged in this case, are first, that the death of Brandon Bomba must be proven. Second, that the defendant had unlawfully, directly or indirectly, given away or exchanged oxycodone with Brandon Bomba. And third, being that the defendant's actions took place on the night of July 4th, 2024 in Hagåtña, Guam. And we will prove this through the testimony of 3 key witnesses. Our first witness being Alex King, a friend of both Brandon and Sam, and someone who not only has experience with Sam's parties, but who will tell you about the party in which Brandon Bomba was last seen alive. Our second witness, Dr. Kelly Flores, the leading medical examiner in today's case, and who will tell you as to the cause, as well as the manner in Brandon Bomba's death. And our final witness, Officer Pat Santos, the first responder to arrive at the scene and not only investigate both the houses of Brandon and Sam, but someone who will tell you as to how the evidence he had found within both houses were similar. A truly straightforward case, one where the government will prove all of the elements beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's the standard you need to hold throughout your mind and throughout this case. And what you'll also come to understand is that Sam Soto had signs to secure her medications. The first sign being that she knew Brandon had a history of substance abuse. The second sign, Brandon had been excessively drinking. And the third sign being that Brandon asked her directly for drugs. The first sign, the second sign, and the third sign should have been enough for Sam Soto to have the heightened awareness to secure her medications from a desperate and a recovering addict. But she failed to do so. And we're asking you to look at the facts that the government will present throughout the course of this trial and to come to the only just conclusion that Sam Soto is guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Does the defendant wish to make an opening statement now or wait until it has heard the people's case in chief? You may. Please step forward.
Irresponsible, inconsistent, and incomplete. 3 words that define this case, and 3 reasons why the prosecution will fail to meet their burden. Your Honors, today you will hear an unfortunate tale of addiction. An addiction that, despite his time in rehab, would ultimately spiral out of control and influence the decedent's actions, resulting in his own death. We are here to clear our client's name, and we will show you that Brandon Bomba is not dead due to the actions of Miss Sam Soto, but due to his own irresponsible choice to do drugs, a choice that ultimately sealed his fate. The prosecution may try to convince you that it was Sam Soto who supplied the victim with drugs, causing his death. But we ask that you pay close attention to the facts presented today, and you will find that the charge of manslaughter is improper and unfitting. On the morning of July 5th, 2024, a high-profile accountant by the name of Brandon Bomba will be found dead from a drug overdose. This death would shock Brandon's close friends and family, one of them being Sam Soto. The two were longtime friends and business partners and had spent their time networking at all kinds of social events and gatherings, such as Sam's annual 4th of July party. While the two made great memories at these parties, little did they know July 4th, 2024 would be the last one they'd spend together. The night started off pretty normally. Sam and Brandon were chatting with guests, but soon they noticed something strange about Brandon's behavior. He'd been drinking most of the evening, and he'd been pretty lively up until he suddenly started questioning partygoers about painkillers. Sam then pulled Brandon aside, and he began to press her about oxycodone in specific. Now, Brandon Baumel was aware that our client had a prescription for this drug, so it struck her as odd. But nevertheless, she reminded him of his progress at rehab, and they ended their conversation with a hug. This conversation was their last. On the morning of July 5th, 2024, Brandon Bombal would be found dead on his couch, surrounded by empty bottles of alcohol and a baggie of oxycodone tablets. The reporting officer and EMS on scene, Pat Santos, determined Brandon dead upon arrival. His body was then sent to the medical examiner's office, where Dr. Kelly Flores performed the autopsy and found a total of 3 substances in Brandon's system, including oxycodone, alcohol, and acetaminophen. But Flores only did conduct quantitative testing on the first 2. Later, authorities would discover an unlabeled bottle of Percocet in the victim's home. Percocet, a painkiller defined as a combination of oxycodone and acetaminophen. Whether this drug had an impact on Brandon's death cannot be determined due to Flores' lack of testing. Additionally, Pat Santos would fail to do further questioning on all the guests who were in attendance at this party on this night, making his investigation incomplete. The fact is, there are many unanswered questions and complicating factors in the death of Brandon Bamba, such as whose drugs did he take, when he took them, and testing on the third substance found in his body, all of which will be addressed during witness testimony. First, Brandon Bamba was irresponsible to do drugs, regardless of where they came from. You will hear testimony from the decedent's close friend, Taylor Garcia. She will reveal more insight into Brandon's irresponsible behaviors while on these drugs and his off-putting demeanor on the night of the 4th. Then you will hear from addiction medicine specialist, Dr. Morgan Lee. He will testify to Brandon Bamba's unwillingness to complete his full time in rehab and how Dr. Kelly Flores provided an inconsistent and incomplete autopsy report. Finally, you'll hear from the defendant, Ms. Sam Soto herself. We will show you how the evidence the prosecution presents tonight is insufficient to prove who gave Brandon those pills, when he took them, or which dosage he took. What the evidence will show is that the circumstances surrounding Brandon Bamba's death are unclear. The cause is evident. Irresponsible, inconsistent, and incomplete. 3 words that define this case, Your Honors, and 3 reasons why the prosecution will fail to meet their burden beyond a reasonable doubt. It wasn't just the drugs that killed Brandon Bamba. It was the actions that he took caused by his own fixation on opioid use. After thorough review of the evidence and the facts of this case, we'd like to ask that you find our client, Ms. Sam Soto, not guilty. Thank you.
We will now begin the presentation of evidence. Prosecution may call its first witness.
Yes, Your Honors. We would like to call Alex King to the stand.
Mr. King, please step forward. The witness chair is there. The witness has been sworn. You may do your direct examination.
Could you please introduce yourself to the court?
Good evening. My name is Alex King.
Thank you, Mr. King. Now, could you start us off by telling us what you do for a living?
Well, I own and manage 2 local businesses, a coffee shop called Legal Grounds Coffee Shop and a bookstore, putting 70 hours of my time between the 2 of them. Since then, I've been involved with the local Chamber of Commerce for about 8 years now.
And what is your role in the local Chamber of Commerce?
In the local Chamber of Commerce, I've been a member of the board of directors for 5 years now, and that's where I met Sam and Brandon.
What is the relationship between these two?
Well, Sam and Brandon mentored me in the local Chamber of Commerce, teaching me many things. Since then, we gotten close and they even invited me to their social events.
And where would these social events take place?
Well, Sam often hosted these at her house every July 4th.
I see. And could you please recall could you please describe how a typical 4th of July party would be like?
So these parties originally started out small with just friends and eventually grew as social networking events where clients were invited for business.
And were these events purely business related?
Not at all. While it was intended for business, it wasn't anything professional. Many people, including myself, just came here to relax and mingle with other business professionals.
And what were these interactions like?
So these interactions were usually about business since we were business people, but we often had casual conversation about how life is, our health, and our latest.
Your Honor, Your Honor, may I respond? I'm simply just laying foundation of how these 4th of July parties would be like.
I have to give you a little more leeway. You may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. And what were these interactions like?
Well, like I said again, these parties were usually about business since we talked about business, but we still had casual conversations about how life is, like our latest pains and aches, which Sam always had a habit of responding to.
And what do you mean that Sam had a habit of responding to these interactions?
Well, it's simple. Sam had a habit of sharing her own medications to people that would attend the party and complain about being in pain.
I see. And could you recall a personal experience you had with this?
There is this one time when I was carrying books all night that I woke up with severe back pain. I mentioned it in the party and Sam pulled me aside later that night and gave me a baggie of pills, telling me to take one before bed and one in the morning.
Your Honor, may I respond? While character evidence is not admissible to show that a character had acted in accordance with, evidence of a habit is admissible under Rule 406. A habit is a regular and repeated action, Your Honor. And in this case, the defendant, Sam Soto, had passed out pills to her guests whenever they were complaining about pain, making it a repeated action rather than a general trait, Your Honor.
Your Honor, a habit would happen over and over again. For example, blinking. I don't see how Sam Soto handing out pills once is habit evidence.
At this time, I'll sustain the objection.
Thank you.
of testimony regarding the distribution of pills to friends is struck.
Your Honor, may I respond to that? I see. Okay. May I respond?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, after this incident, could you recall Sam doing this with other guests?
So after Sam approached me that night and gave me pills, it was like a habit of hers. I saw her at previous nights, other events, giving other people baggies of pills. She would pull them aside and give them.
You have to use the mic, please.
Your Honor, I don't see the relevance of this. We just stated that Sam Soto, this wasn't a habit.
You may respond.
Oh, Your Honor, my witness is just simply going on with the line of questioning in regards to the habit and just establishing more occurrences with that, Your Honor.
May respond.
Well, like I said, we've established that this isn't a habit. A habit would be something like blinking or breathing over and over again.
I believe the witness had testified that it happened over and over again after the incident of a personal experience, Your Honor.
The court finds this is not evidence of a habit, and I sustain the objection. You may go on to your next subject.
Yes, Your Honor. Okay, now moving on, Mr. King, let's shift gears and talk about the July 4th party in 2024. What were you doing that night?
Well, I arrived early to the party and brought some coffee samples and hard cider.
And why did you bring these items?
Well, the coffee samples was, of course, to promote my local business, Legal Grounds Coffee Shop, and the hard cider was for the party.
Again, Your Honor, this is to lay foundation for my further line of questioning.
I'll give you some leeway, but move into the area of importance. And you may continue.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, what were you doing that night?
Well, after I arrived early to the party, I was talking to a bunch of people and even a family that often visited my coffee shop. I was just getting comfortable after long hours of working.
And after you got comfortable, what did you do next?
After it was starting to get late at night, that family started to go home and it was just smaller groups. I was talking to a group of people when Brandon joined into our conversation.
And could you recall what the conversation was about after he joined in?
Brandon was complaining about his pains and aches.
Your Honor, hearsay is an out-of-court statement offered for the truth of the matter stated. This statement provided by the witness is not offered for the truth of the matter stated, rather the effect it had on Alex King. Because he heard Brandon talk about his pain and aches, it prompted Alex King and other guests to have left this conversation.
Oh, objection.
Thank you, Your Honors. Now, could you please, once again, describe the conversation you had after Brandon joined in?
So after Brandon joined into our conversation, he was talking about pains and aches, and it started to make people uncomfortable that they drifted away until it was just me and Brandon left.
And what, if anything, did you stay in this conversation?
I also started to get uncomfortable, so I made an excuse and left Brandon by himself.
I see. And after you had left Brandon that night, did you see him throughout the party?
Later that night, I saw him with Sam, and it looked like they had a pretty tense conversation.
I see. And when was the last time you saw Brandon?
It wasn't until I was saying goodbye to everyone that I saw Sam and Brandon again. It looked like they resolved whatever they had, and it wasn't until a few days later that I heard of Brandon's passing.
I see. Thank you, Mr. King. Your Honors, no further questions.
Thank you. Does the defendant wish to cross-examine the witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may.
Mr. King, you're aware that you're under oath today, right?
Yes.
And you know that there can be consequences for lying on the stands?
Yes, I believe so.
And you know this because you've gotten in trouble for lying to a police officer before, haven't you?
Objection, relevance, Your Honor.
You may respond.
Your Honor, I'm using this to impeach the witness on his credibility.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
I believe the opposing counsel is using a misdemeanor that happened at around 10 years ago. I don't see how this is relevant to the witness's truthfulness or character today.
May I respond, Your Honor?
You may.
Rule 609A2 states that no matter whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony or the time, any crimes of dishonesty must be admitted.
Just give me a second.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes.
I believe that this still would have more prejudicial over probative value to this case, Your Honor, as it adds to a misdemeanor, again, 10 years ago, about the character's truthfulness. If the opposing counsel could use a prior or a more current instances to prove truthfulness, Your Honor, I would prefer that so, Your Honor.
Could you clarify when this happened?
I believe it was 9 years ago, Your Honor.
No, would you ask the defendant, please?
Oh, Alex King, do you recall how many years ago that this happened?
I believe it's about a decade ago. It happened when I was straight out of university. I was quite young and immature.
How old are you now?
I'm 38 years old.
Okay, the court finds that this incident probably occurred more than 10 years ago, and under Rule 609 is not admissible. You
Yes,
may
Your Honor.
continue your questioning.
Your Honor, may I move to strike? Thank you, Your Honor.
Testimony is struck.
May I continue, Your Honor? Now, Alex King, you were a guest at Sam Soto's party, right?
I often attended the party. We gotten close, so yes.
And you were drinking alcohol the entire time you were at this party.
Just like any other party, everyone was drinking. I was trying to relax, so I was also drinking at that party.
In fact, you drank so much that you didn't think it was safe to drive yourself home.
No, I just took the precaution of taking a ride with a friend.
Continuing on, you mentioned bringing coffee beans to the function, correct?
Yes, to promote my local business, Legal Grounds Coffee Shop located in Dedido.
And you brought these coffee beans in small baggies?
That's where I stored my coffee beans for it to be sampled by guests in the party.
And you mentioned seeing Sam hand something to Brandon.
From where I was standing later at that party, it looked like Sam and Brandon gave something small.
And you mentioned that it looks like a baggie?
I cannot really see. I don't have great eyesight, but it looked like they had given something that looks like a baggie.
But like you mentioned, you brought baggies of your own to the party.
Well, I just based on previous events of Sam giving me baggies of pills myself and how they were talking about it earlier, I suspected it would be baggies of pills.
Mr. King, that's not what I asked. I asked if you brought your own bags to the party.
Yes, I did, in coffee samples for the guests.
So if you saw what you said looked like could have been a baggie, it could have possibly been the coffee beans that you brought.
Well, like I said in my direct was Sam had a habit of giving out these pills to people at the party. She gave it to me once and I saw her give it to other people. And Brandon and Sam had an approachment later at the party. Sam and Brandon were talking and Brandon was asking Sam for drugs.
Mr. King, that's not what I asked. I asked if it's possible that if you saw a baggie and you brought baggies, the baggie that you saw could have been your own bags.
I am not sure.
No further questions, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
You may sit down. People may call their second votes.
Your Honors, the prosecution would like to call Dr. Kelly Flores to the stand.
Dr. Kelly Flores, please report to the stand.
The witness has been sworn. You may proceed.
Good evening. Could you please introduce yourself to the court?
Good evening. My name is Dr. Kelly Flores, and I am an assistant medical examiner with a focus in forensic pathology.
And could you elaborate as to what you do as an assistant medical examiner?
As an assistant medical examiner, we are tasked to investigate human deaths by conducting preliminary investigations and sometimes even autopsies to determine how a death occurred.
And could you please explain your educational background prior to becoming an assistant medical examiner?
Of course. So first, I attended the University of California, San Diego to get my bachelor's of science. And then I attended the University of North Carolina for my medical doctorates. And then I attended the University of Minnesota for my 4-year residency in pathology. And last but not least, I attended the Duke University to become board certified in forensic pathology.
And Dr. Flores, for how long would you say you've been a medical examiner?
I've been a medical examiner since 2011, so for about 13 years now.
And within your 13-year career, how many autopsies have you conducted?
Throughout my entire career, I've done over 1,000 autopsies, and in the last 5 years, I've done hundreds on opioid overdoses, and in this year specifically, I've done 49 on opioid overdoses as well.
And could you elaborate on the procedures to conducting an autopsy?
So to conduct an autopsy, we first examine the external features of the body, and we do this by examining the face and the skin and other parts of the body. Immediately after that, we examine the interior parts of the body, and we do this by cutting open cavities, removing any organs, and examining the body for other signs of illnesses, injuries, or other causes of death.
Thank you, Dr. Flores. Your Honors, the evidence has demonstrated that Dr. Flores has the training, experience, education, knowledge, and skill to be recognized as an expert within the field of forensic pathology, and we ask that she be recognized as such.
Does the defendant wish to voir dire the witness?
No, Your Honor.
Do you agree that she's an expert in the field of forensic pathology?
Yes, Your Honor.
The witness is found to be qualified as an expert in the field of forensic pathology.
Thank you, Your
You may
Honors.
continue.
Now, Dr. Flores, let's move on as to how you got involved in this case. Could you please explain?
So the day Mr. Bomba's body was found deceased in his home on July 5th, 2024, my office was actually called to conduct an investigation given the nature of Mr. Bomba's death.
And could you please explain what were your initial findings on the nature of his death?
According to the police investigations from my preliminary investigations, I learned that Mr. Bomba was found deceased in his home with a telltale sign of an opioid overdose, specifically the white cone of foam at his mouth. There were also other signs that indicated that Mr. Bomba's death was not of a natural cause, such as the 40 milligram oxycodone pills found near his body.
And I'd like to talk more about these pills that were found within his house. Could you please elaborate on them?
Well, opioids, such as the oxycodone found in Mr. Bomba's home, are highly addictive drugs, mainly used as painkillers, and they work by binding to the opioid receptors in the central nervous system and stopping pain signals to the brain. The high dosages of opioids found in Mr. Bomba's home, such as the 40 milligram oxycodone pills and the Percocet pills, which contain 60 milligrams of oxycodone and 5 milligrams of acetaminophen, indicate that these were not to be prescribed to anyone who does not have prior tolerance to opioids or isn't experiencing severe pain.
Now, Dr. Flores, let's move on to your autopsy. Could you elaborate on how you conducted your examinations on Mr. Bomba's body?
So to conduct the examinations on Mr. Bomba's body, we examined his organs such as his lungs, his liver, his kidneys, and his heart.
And could you tell us what you found within these examinations?
In these examinations, I learned that Mr. Bomba's lungs were of an unusual weight. An average healthy left lung is 400 grams and an average healthy right lung is 450 grams. However, Mr. Bomba's lungs were double this weight, and this was a strong sign of an opioid overdose. Other than that, I also learned that his kidneys had this granular texture and his heart was greatly enlarged, and this was a sign of hypertension.
Now, Dr. Flores, could you explain why the lungs being double the weight are a strong sign of an opioid overdose?
Well, like I said earlier, when overdosing on opioids, the lungs stop receiving signals from the brain, and this causes asphyxiation. And when this happens, fluid builds up in the lungs, which is called pulmonary edema. This fluid eventually builds up into the trachea, out of the nose or the mouth, creating the cone of foam, such as that of Mr. Bomba's.
Now, aside from your examinations, was there anything else done within your autopsy?
Well, immediately after the autopsy, we decided to find samples in the femoral artery of Mr. Bomba's left leg, as this is the most reliable place to find opioids.
And could you please tell us as to what you found when taking these samples?
As expected, we found concentrations of oxycodone, but also concentrations of alcohol and trace amounts of acetaminophen.
And what would you go on to do with these substances?
Well, since we found concentrations of both alcohol and oxycodone, we decided to send them out for further testing at a toxicology lab.
And Dr. Flores, what were the results of these further testing that you had taken?
So oxycodone was found at a 0.4 milligrams per liter of blood, and alcohol was found at a 0.09 grams per deciliter of blood.
Now, Dr. Flores, you did mention acetaminophen prior. Why not test the acetaminophen itself?
Well, unlike the oxycodone and the alcohol, which we found in more than trace amounts or concentrations, acetaminophen was only found in trace amounts. And when less than 5 milligrams of acetaminophen had been taken 24 hours prior to the death, this would only show up in trace amounts, making it insignificant and highly unlikely that Mr. Bomba took pills containing acetaminophen to cause his death.
So, Dr. Flores, following your autopsy and your toxicology, were you able to come to a conclusion on the cause as well as manner of death?
Yes, I have.
And could you please share with the court today as to what you had concluded?
I concluded the death of Mr. Bomba to be caused by a consumption of oxycodone, possibly exacerbated by the co-consumption of alcohol. As for the manner of death, I was able to reasonably conclude that it was an accidental overdose. And as for the trace amounts of acetaminophen, since there were no liver damage that would indicate a abuse of acetaminophen, and there were only trace amounts of acetaminophen, we were able to rule it out as a factor in Mr. Bomba's death, leaving oxycodone as a primary cause of Mr. Bomba's death.
Thank you, Dr. Flores. Your Honors, no further questions.
Thank you. Does the defendant wish to cross-examine the witness?
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Dr. Flores, an autopsy report is usually performed when the cause of death is deemed to be unnatural or unclear. Is that correct?
That's correct, and that's why we have an autopsy report for Mr. Bomba.
Thank you. Now, initially, you found 3 substances in Brandon's system, correct?
We found acetaminophen, trace amounts, alcohol in concentrations, and oxycodone in concentrations, yes.
But you only conducted quantitative testing on 2 of them.
We conducted testing on the concentrations of alcohol and oxycodone, yes.
But what did you quantitate specifically?
We quantitated oxycodone and alcohol.
And can you please explain what quantitation means?
To quantitate means to find the exact amount of substance in a person's body.
And you didn't quantitate the acetaminophen, is that right?
Well, in our preliminary testings, we found that acetaminophen only showed up in trace amounts, and trace amounts indicate that 5 milligrams of the drug had not been taken 24 hours prior to the death. So we deemed it unnecessary to take these testings.
And can you tell us what a preliminary test is?
A preliminary test is a test that we conduct to see how much of a drug is in a person's body.
See how much of a drug. So can you give us a number for that acetaminophen?
It was less than 5 milligrams.
But what number specifically?
We don't have a specific number, but it was less than 5 milligrams, making it insignificant.
But if you can't give us an exact number, how do you know it was less than 5 milligrams?
It showed up in trace amounts.
I'll move on. Dr. Flores, you're aware that Percocet was found in Brandon Bomba's possession?
According to the preliminary investigations I conducted from viewing the police reports, yes, I am.
And what is Percocet?
Well, Percocet is a combination of oxycodone and acetaminophen.
And you stated this Percocet prescription had 60 milligrams of oxy?
That's correct.
Is this a lethal amount?
When taken with other substances, such as alcohol, it could be lethal.
And you found that there was alcohol above the legal limit in Brandon Bomba's system, correct?
It was when conducting the investigations on Mr. Bomba's body, we found alcohol at a 0.09 grams per deciliter of blood. And this is above the limit of driving on Guam, which is 0.08 grams per deciliter of blood. So it's above the limit of driving.
And Dr. Flores, what happens when oxycodone and alcohol interact?
Oxycodone could be exacerbated by alcohol, and when this happens, it could lead to an overdose.
Could it also cause a pulmonary edema, for example?
Well, pulmonary edema. So when you are overdosing on opioids, like I said earlier, this could lead to the brain stopping sending signals to the lungs, and this leads to asphyxiation or the lungs stopping from working. And when this happens, fluid can build up in the lungs, and this is called pulmonary edema. So yes, it would create pulmonary edema.
And in your autopsy, you found evidence that this is how this contributed to Brandon Bomba's death.
Could you please repeat that?
And in your autopsy, you found that Brandon Bomba suffered from a pulmonary edema.
According to my investigations, yes, he did, as his lungs were double the weight.
So hypothetically, Brandon Bomba could have taken that Percocet 24 hours in advance and taken alcohol, and that could have caused a pulmonary edema.
Well, since it was in trace amounts, the Percocet wouldn't have been a factor in Mr. Bomba's death.
but the oxycodone from the Percocet would have, correct?
If it was taken 24 hours prior to the death, but since we tested this and it showed trace amounts, it was not taken 24 hours prior to the death, no.
Can your testing tell us what source of oxycodone Brandon Bomba took?
I'm sorry?
Does your testing tell us which source of oxycodone Brandon Bomba died from?
My testing only shows how much of a drug has been taken, such as the oxycodone.
So you would agree it's inconclusive whether Brandon died from the oxycodone next to him or possibly the oxycodone in his bathroom?
Well, since the oxycodone or the acetaminophen showed up in trace amounts, we deemed it as insignificant to the case and highly unlikely that he took these pills to cause his death.
But you reviewed Pat Santos's police report, correct?
Yes, I did in my preliminary investigation.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay. Oh, yes, sir.
And because you reviewed Pat Santos's police report, you're aware that Percocet had the only source of acetaminophen recovered, correct?
Well, all the way upstairs in Mr. Bomba's home, after seeing the police reports in Pat Santos's investigations, I learned that Percocet was found in the upstairs bathroom of Mr. Bomba, which was closed and upstairs.
Yes, which we've established, Ms. Flores. My question was, based on that report, you're aware that Percocet was the only thing found in that house that contained acetaminophen. Is that right?
Oh, yes, I am aware of that.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Your Honor, may I redirect? Thank you. Thank you, Your Honors. Now, Dr. Flores, could you please elaborate as to why Percocet wasn't considered a factor within his death?
Well, like I said earlier, Percocet or the amounts of acetaminophen like those in Percocet, which was in 5 milligrams, in our preliminary testing only showed as trace amounts. And when trace amounts show in our preliminary testing, this indicates that 5 milligrams of the drug had not been taken 24 hours prior to death. Other than that, there was also no liver damage to indicate an abuse of acetaminophen, making it highly unlikely that Mr. Bomba took Percocet to cause his death.
And with the prior evidence that you had found, which of the pills was more likely for Mr. Bomba to have taken?
Mr. Bomba could have taken the 40 milligram oxycodone pills on his coffee table as it was oxycodone and
Objection, Your Honor, speculation.
Your Honor, my question was based on Dr. Kelly Flores' prior evidence that she had discovered. Because she is an expert witness, she would be allowed to answer hypothetical questions, and her answers, but merely being based on her specialized knowledge, as well as any facts that she may have obtained during her observations.
Permission to respond, Your Honor? Kelly Flores' speculation can only be based on her facts, and Dr. Kelly Flores' testing only goes so far. Because Dr. Flores was not there when Brandon Bomba took the medication, and her testing does not tell him what form he took it in, she cannot speculate on that.
May I respond? Your Honor, I'm not asking the witness to say directly which one he may have taken on the night. I'm asking the witness to testify based on the evidence she had discovered and the autopsy, as well as the toxicology report she had taken, as to which pill she thinks was more likely to cause his death. Yes, Your Honor.
Again, Your Honor, this hypothetical question is not just based on Kelly Flores' facts. Kelly Flores has even testified herself. Her testing would not have told us if he would have taken the oxycodone next to him or the oxycodone in his cabinet. So she cannot say the likelihood of it. She can only stick to the facts of her case and what is in her autopsy report.
Yes, Your Honor. So, Dr. Flores, based on what you had gathered, what were you able to conclude on the pills that were found?
Well, I was able to conclude that Mr. Bomba's cause of death, or the primary cause of death, was oxycodone, and that it was highly unlikely that Mr. Bomba took Percocet pills, which contained acetaminophen, as there were only trace amounts and there was no liver damage.
No further questions, Your Honor.
No recross, Your Honor.
Dr. Kelly Flores, please step down from the stand.
Yes, Your Honor, the prosecution calls Officer Pat Santos to the stand.
Officer Pat Santos, please report to the stand.
Good evening. Could you please introduce yourself for the court?
Good evening. My name is Pat Santos, and I am a police officer.
Thank you, Officer Santos. And so, could you talk about your professional and educational background?
Well, where should I begin? I first started off by obtaining my associate's degree in criminology in 2005 from GCC. I completed a peace officer training program and briefly worked as a dispatcher. I am a registered first responder after obtaining my certificate in the University of Hawaii in 2008. And in 2013, I began working as a police officer.
Thank you, Officer Santos. Now, let's talk about how exactly you got involved in today's case.
Well, it all started on July 5th. I was working my morning day shift, grabbing my cup of joe, when I got word from dispatch about a 48-year-old unresponsive male. I went to investigate immediately and later identified him to be Brandon Bamba.
And could you tell the court what exactly had you seen when you first arrived?
Well, when I first arrived, I was greeted by Skylar Bamba, who seemed distraught about Brandon. I went in to investigate and saw Brandon fully clothed, face up, with beer bottles on the floor and foam coming from his mouth.
And how would you check on Mr. Bamba's body, Officer Santos?
I first put on latex gloves for evidence handling, and I went to check on Brandon and immediately called for EMS and a medical examiner while performing CPR.
And after this, how would you begin searching Mr. Bamba's home?
Well, right next to Mr. Bamba was a pill baggie that had about a dozen or so pills in it and had a strange labeling, which I photographed.
And what other evidence had you found in Mr. Bamba's house?
As I continued to investigate, I came across the cabinet in the bedroom or in the bathroom and found a orange prescription bottle that was later identified by forensics to be Percocet, a type of oxycodone. It was also sealed.
And what did you do with all these evidence that you found in Mr. Bamba's house?
Well, first I took a photograph of all of them and I submitted them.
And as a police officer, would this be a regularly conducted activity for you?
Absolutely.
And are these photographs here with us today in court?
Yes, they are.
Your Honor's permission to retrieve what has been marked as exhibits number 7 and 8 from the bailiff.
I understand the exhibits have been admitted by, or the parties have agreed to admit the exhibits. Is that correct?
Your Honor, I was going to lay foundation to move these exhibits into evidence.
Okay, you may do that.
Thank you, Your Honor. Let the record reflect I am showing opposing counsel what has been marked as exhibits number 7 and 8. Your Honors, would you like to see a copy?
I have a copy. Sure.
Thank you. Now, Officer Santos, could you go ahead and identify these exhibits right here?
Yes, this is the photographs I took in Mr. Bamba's home.
And do these pictures accurately depict the scene when you first arrived?
Yes, they do.
And are these a fair and accurate copy of those photographs?
Absolutely.
Your Honor's permission to submit exhibits number 7 and 8 into evidence as the authenticity has been established.
Does the defense have any objection?
No objections to either exhibit, Your Honor.
Okay, exhibit 7 and 8 are admitted
Thank you, Your Honor.
by stipulation.
Now, Officer Santos, could you go ahead and hold exhibit number 7 for the court and depict what's happening in this image?
So in this image, it shows the pill baggie that was next to Brandon's body that had a labeling of 3689 and was later identified by forensics to be oxycodone.
Thank you. Now, could you do the same for exhibit number 8?
This exhibit, it shows the cabinet in Mr. Bamba's restroom that contained the orange prescription bottle that was later identified by forensics to be Percocet, a type of oxycodone.
Now, after you had finished with your investigation of Mr. Bamba's house, how would you proceed further with your investigation?
While I was investigations quickly showed that there was a potential of, or a conversation of painkillers being discussed in a party the previous night, specifically the party in Miss Soto's home.
And how would you proceed to investigate Miss Soto's home?
Well, first I was greeted by Miss Soto, who let me search her home.
And how would this search proceed?
I first came across the kitchen where I found sandwich baggies that were very similar to the baggie on the coffee table.
And what evidence had you found in Miss Soto's home?
While I would continue to search, I found in the bedroom was a strong box that contained personal belongings along with pill baggies that were similar to the pill baggie next to Brandon Bomba.
And what had you done with the photograph of the strongbox?
So first I photographed it and I submitted it.
And is this all the evidence that you had found in Miss Soto's home?
No, I also took the pill baggie in the strongbox and the pill baggie that was found next to Brandon Bomba and put them side by side and photographed them.
And are these photographs here with us today in court?
Yes, they are.
Your Honor, permission to retrieve what has been marked as exhibits number 9 and 10. Thank you, Your Honor. Let the record reflect I'm showing opposing counsel what has been marked as exhibits number 9 and 10. Thank you. Now, Officer Santos, could you go ahead and do the same and identify these exhibits right here?
Yes, this is the strong box and the pill baggies from both houses photographed side by side.
And are these a fair and accurate copy of those photographs, Officer Santos?
Yes, they are.
Your Honor, this time the prosecution would like to submit exhibits number 9 and 10 into evidence as the authenticity has been established.
Does the defendant have any objection?
We do not have any objections, excuse me, to exhibit number 10, Your Honor, but we do raise an objection to exhibit number 9 on the grounds of Rule 407, subsequent remedial measures.
Your Honor, opposing counsel could elaborate on their specific objection on what they mean by subsequent remedial matters.
With your permission, I will elaborate, Your Honor.
Yes, please.
Under Rule 407, subsequent remedial measures, it states exactly when measures are taken that would have made an earlier injury or harm less likely to occur, evidence of the subsequent measures is not admissible to prove negligence, which I believe opposing counsel is attempting to do here.
Your Honor, the photographs that Officer Santos for exhibit number 9 took was of Ms. Soto's strongbox. And this photograph is to demonstrate that Officer Santos did in fact find evidence within Ms. Soto's home.
Could you explain why your objection again, please?
The reasoning for my objection, Your Honor?
Yeah.
The reason that I object on this ground specifically is because the purchasing of the lockbox may be used to show Sam Soto's negligence in not purchasing a lockbox earlier to protect her friend, the decedent Brandon Bomba. So I raise an objection on that ground.
Your Honor, if I may be heard, opposing counsel is speculating on my motives of asking this witness, and the reason why the strongbox was bought by the defendant herself is beyond the witness's knowledge, as Officer Santos does not need to know exactly why Ms. Soto has this strongbox. He simply just did the investigation, Your Honor.
I believe the objection leads to speculation, and no testimony has been given to that point, so the objection's overruled. You may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Exhibit 9 and 10 are admitted. Exhibit 9 is admitted over the objection of the defendant, and exhibit 10 is admitted by stipulation.
Thank you, Your Honors. Now, Officer Santos, could you go ahead and hold exhibit number 9 for the court and depict what's happening in this image?
So in this exhibit, it shows the strong box that contained personal belongings of Sam Soto and the pill baggie that was similar to the baggie next to Brandon Bomba.
And what was inside this baggie in the strong box, Officer Santos?
It was also oxycodone.
Thank you. Now, could you do the same for exhibit number 10?
In this exhibit, it shows both pill baggies from both houses side by side.
And what did you found significant about the evidence in this photograph?
The most significant thing about this photograph is that both pill baggies from both houses were very similar. The size of the pill baggies were similar. The labels and labelings of the pill baggies looked as if it was done by the same person, and the dosage of the pills were the exact same.
Thank you, Officer Santos. And so after your overall investigation, how would you proceed further?
Well, I conducted a police report.
And about how long did this police report take to make?
It took me about a day, but the actual verification of the police report by forensics took a couple of weeks.
Thank you so much, Officer Santos. Your Honors, no further questions.
Thank you. Does the defendant have cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Thank you. Now, Officer Santos, I have a couple questions for you about your investigation on the day of July 5th, 2024. Now, just to recap, you were called to the home of a 48-year-old unresponsive male that morning, correct?
Yes, while I was grabbing my cup of Joe.
At Legal Grounds Coffee, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you were let into the home of Brandon Bomba when you made your way there by Miss Skylar Bomba.
Could you please slow down your talking? I can't really understand.
Sure. I'm sorry. What I mean to say is you were let into the home of Brandon Bomba by Miss Skylar Bomba, correct?
Yes, I was. She seemed very distraught about Brandon being unresponsive.
Okay, thank you. Now, you begun your investigation that morning at Brandon Bomba's home.
Yes, I did begin my investigation at Brandon Bomba's home.
And among the many things you observed, you had found a bag of pills and also a prescription bottle.
The baggie of pills were next to Brandon Bomba, while the prescription bottle was closed and sealed in the second floor in the restroom cabinet.
Okay, thank you. Now, Officer Santos, you had stated that these pills had been sent to the labs for testing.
Yes, both the Percocet bottle, or both the prescription bottle and the baggie of pills were sent to forensics.
Okay, thank you. Additionally, the bag of pills and the prescription bottle were both tested for DNA evidence.
Yes, they were.
And unfortunately, no usable evidence was found on the bag of pills downstairs.
No usable evidence, yes.
No usable evidence, no fingerprints, no hairs, no spit, nothing.
No, no spit, no.
Okay, thank you. However, there was DNA found on the upstairs prescription bottle.
Yes, and it was sealed.
It was sealed, and the pill bottle belonged to Mr. Brandon Bomba.
I heard from Dr. Kwan about a potential of previous people who get prescriptions. They like to save their pill bottles or their pills for
Okay, thank
a
you.
really bad day.
We'll talk about Dr. Kwan later, but for right now, I'd like to cover the investigation. So after you had finished at Brandon Bomba's home, you had made your way over to the home of Sam Soto.
Yes, after my investigation in Mr. Bomba's home led to the potential of pills being discussed.
And Sam Soto had willingly let you into the home to conduct your investigation.
I told her I could come back with a warrant and make it all official, but she said she felt really bad about Brandon's death.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, Officer Santos, after you concluded your investigation in Sam Soto's home, you had a conversation with Dr. Kwan, correct?
Yes, I did.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Your Honor, if I may respond? Under stipulation, I believe stipulation 3 of the Guam Mock Trial Rules of Evidence, Officer Santos is allowed to testify to the statements of Dr. Kwan. Additionally, Dr. Kwan is said to be off island and unavailable to testify.
Your Honor, if I may respond, I still believe this is an out-of-court statement offered for the truth of the matter asserted.
Excuse me, let me find the stipulation. Pursuant to the stipulation by the parties, the objection is overruled. That objection was waived in the stipulation.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Santos will re-ask the question. You had conducted an interview with Dr. Kwan following your investigation at Sam Soto's home.
Yes, I did, and she told me about Brandon's problems.
She had stated that Brandon Bomba had an issue with narcotics in college.
Yes, she said Brandon was addicted to narcotics.
Okay, thank you. And she had also stated that she had warned Brandon Bomba against mixing alcohol with
Objection, Your
narcotics.
Honor. Relevance. I don't see how the history of Brandon Bomba's addiction, especially the conversations with his doctor, add any probative value to today's case, Your Honor.
May I respond, Your Honor? The witness is testifying to a history of addiction by the decedent Brandon Bomba and is showing a history of multiple abuses of narcotics and of alcohol. This is very pertinent and relevant to today's case since we are on a case of someone overdosing on opioids. So I believe the witness is providing relevant information.
If I may be heard, Your Honor, I believe the prejudicial value of this evidence outweighs its probative because this paints a bad picture of Brandon Bomba to the court tonight. And Brandon Bomba is unavailable to testify to whether or not the true actions of his drug history, Your Honor.
The objection is overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Usually statements made to a physician are exempt from the hearsay rule because of their reliability. So I'll let the testimony continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you like me to restate the question?
Yes, please.
Now, if I remember correctly, Dr. Kwan had warned Brandon Bomba against mixing alcohol and narcotics.
Yes, he did warn him about that.
And Brandon Bomba had waved it off.
Sadly, he did, yes.
Okay, thank you. Now, this was your entire investigation.
Yes, it was Brandon Bomba's, Sam Soto's, and Dr. Kwan.
Thank you. And after all of this investigating, you had created an investigation report.
Yes, and I submitted it a few weeks later due to the need of verification by forensics.
Thank you. Now, specific on that, the investigation was all concluded 100% finished on the day of July 5th, 2024.
Yes, but the actual verification from forensics took a while.
Thank you. Now, Officer Santos, on this investigation report, you had recounted all of the places that you had investigated.
Yes, I do.
Unfortunately, though, on your investigation report, you had not mentioned Sam Soto's home or the interview with Dr. Kwan.
We didn't come.
Objection, Your Honor, assumes facts, not evidence. Opposing counsel is referencing Exhibit 1, the Officer Santos police report, and as this exhibit is not into evidence, he cannot question specific facts and statements that are within this exhibit, Your Honor.
May I respond, Your Honor?
You may.
Seeing as how the witness created the investigation report, was the sole investigator, and I remember correctly, actually signed the investigation report, I believe that the witness has enough personal knowledge to state to the facts that he himself put inside of the investigation report.
However, Your Honor, opposing counsel may do so without specifically referencing Pat Santos' Exhibit 1, Your Honor.
The objection's overruled. You may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you like me to restate the question?
Yes, please.
Now, on this investigation report, you had not mentioned your investigation of Sam Soto's home or your interview with Dr. Kwan.
The evidence I've gathered from Brandon and Sam Soto's house were quite sufficient, so I didn't see the need to.
You didn't believe that the interview with Dr. Kwan was sufficient?
No, the interview was sufficient, but the bigger picture was the Brandon Bomba investigation, Brandon Bomba's house investigation, and Sam Soto's house's investigation.
That is your personal belief.
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative. Thank you, Your Honor.
I'll move on, Your Honor. No further questions, Your Honor.
Correct.
Yes, Your Honor.
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Before I begin, Your Honor, may I request how much time I have left for direct examination? Thank you. Now, Officer Santos, earlier during call examination, you were asked about fingerprints. Is that correct?
Yes, I was asked about fingerprints.
And so could you talk about all that there is about the fingerprints you found during your examination?
Well, while there was none usable, there were still a little bit that was not usable, sadly.
Thank you so much. Your Honor, no further questions.
Do you have anything further?
No, Your Honor. At this time, the prosecution rests their case.
Sorry, I was directing to the defendant. Do you wish to recross?
A brief recross, Your Honor.
You may.
Thank you. Officer Santos, I would just like to restate that there was no usable evidence at all found on the bag of pills.
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
I'll allow the question. You may ask.
Yes, Your Honor.
Would you like me to restate?
Yes, please.
Just to recap, there was no usable DNA found on the bag of pills in Brandon Bomba's home.
While there might not have been usable, there were still
Thank you.
potential
No further questions, Your
details on the baggies.
Thank you, Officer Santos.
You may step down. Thank you.
Your Honor, at this time, the prosecution rests their case.
The prosecution has rested its case. As I indicated earlier, we will take a 10-minute recess.
Officer Pat.
Turn at about 8 minutes to 7. The court's in recess.
Officer Pat Santos, please step down from the stand. All rise. The court is now in session.
Please be seated. Thank you. The people have presented their case in chief, so we'll now move to the defendant. Do you wish to present any evidence?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense would like to call Dr. Morgan Lee to the stand.
Dr. Morgan Lee, please report to the stand.
The witness has been sworn. You may begin.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good evening, Dr. Lee. Could you please introduce yourself for the court?
Good evening. My name is Dr. Morgan Lee.
And Dr. Lee, where do you currently work?
Currently, I work at a place called Divine Hospital. I've been working there for 26 years.
And did you work anywhere prior to this?
Yeah, prior to that, I worked at Wayfair Residential. I was a senior attending physician there. So I dealt with mental health problems along with addiction problems.
And what education does one need to receive to have jobs like this?
Yeah, so I started my education in America at the University of Illinois, where I graduated with the summa cum laude. Then I went to the University of Minnesota College of Medicine, which I graduated the cum laude. And then I spent my residency and internship at UCLA with some of the best doctors in the country.
And Dr. Lee, have you ever published any peer-reviewed scholarly articles or research?
Yeah, so in my time during college, I used to write a lot, journals mostly. Most of them were on drug addicts and their escapism behavior, but I did write a manuscript that got awarded the Thomas Clarence Addiction Medicine Award.
And over the years, how closely have you studied opioid addiction?
So ever since medical school through my 26-year career, I've been studying addiction medicine.
And Dr. Lee, is this your first time testifying in a court case?
No, I've testified 5 times before.
And were you an expert witness in these?
Yes, I was an expert witness testifying in addiction medicine.
Your Honor, the defense would like to recognize Dr. Morgan Lee as an expert witness in addiction medicine, specializing in opioid addiction.
Do the people have any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, the court will find the witness qualified and certifies him as an expert in the field of addiction medicine with a specialty in opioid addiction.
Thank you, Your Honor. Continuing on, Dr. Lee, how did you prepare to testify today?
Yeah, so you and your attorneys approached me and asked me to review all relevant documents, but I really spent most of my time looking at Dr. Kelly Flores' autopsy and affidavit.
And just for clarification, how long did you say you worked at Wayfair?
At Wayfair Residential, it was from 2006 to 2015, so 9 years.
Your Honor, permission to retrieve what has been previously marked as Exhibit 2. Let the record show that I'm showing opposing counsel. Dr. Lee, do you recognize this document?
Yeah, so during my time at Wayfair, there's 2 documents that every patient gets, an entrance form and an exit form. This is an exit form, and it has the same formatting and comments that a usual procedure would make, and some that I've done over 100 times.
So would you say this is a fair and accurate copy of this document?
Yes, this document has the same formatting and same writing notes that I would have during my time at Wayfair.
And did you ever make any forms like this yourself while at your time at Wayfair?
Yes, during my time at Wayfair, every patient I was personally attending to, I had to write an exit form for them.
And what is the purpose of these forms?
So exit forms have 2 main reasons. 1, to keep a record at Wayfair, but 2, to mark the progress and what really happened at during their recovery.
Your Honor, permission to submit what has been previously marked as Exhibit 2 into evidence as Exhibit 2?
Your Honor, I'd like to raise an objection towards the exhibit being entered into evidence. This is a hearsay objection as it has no relevance towards Dr. Morgan Lee. And even on the exhibit itself, there's no mentioning of Dr. Morgan Lee at all. And the only staff signature that had been added there would be James Morrison, who's not here to testify today.
You may respond.
Your Honor, this document is a hearsay exception under Rule 804-6, I believe, as it is a regularly conducted activity. Dr. Morgan Lee has stated that in his entire time at Wayfair, he had often seen these forms used for every patient, and he even made many of these forms himself.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
Your Honor, 804-6 is a hearsay exception called declaring unavailable. 6 is merely a two-part section that would show an exception towards the declaring being unavailable. And I believe the opposing counsel is referring to regularly conducted activity under 803-6. But as Dr. Morgan Lee did state, he has made forms like this before. This form itself is not from him and has no connection towards him at all.
I believe the authenticity of this exhibit was stipulated to by the parties. That it is a exhibit from Wayfair, is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor, it is an exhibit from Wayfair, but what I'm objecting to is the fact that it has no correlation to Dr. Morgan Lee, and thus he can't testify to the contents on it since the only signatures that could be found are both from Brandon Bamba and James Morrison, who are both not here to testify today.
The exhibit is admissible as a regularly conducted business activity and record. Your objection's overruled. You may continue.
Yes, Your
Thank you,
Honor.
Your Honor. Now, Dr. Lee, looking at this document, what does this lead you to determine about Brandon Bamba?
So like I said, every patient that comes and gets an exit form, we first mark their participation. Brandon Bamba's was marked as low, but the comments that the doctor made here is even more alarming, marking that Brandon Bamba would likely still be an addict after recovery, and he opted to leave by himself. This gives me the opinion that Brandon Bamba was likely an addict before rehab and still was after rehab.
Your Honor, permission to retrieve the exhibit.
You may.
Continuing on, Dr. Lee, what other steps did you take to prepare to testify today?
So after looking at Dr. Kelly Flores' autopsy report, I asked for a blood sample of Brandon Bamba.
And did her team accept this request?
No, they refused.
Now, you mentioned reviewing Dr. Kelly Flores' autopsy report. Was there anything that struck you as interesting in this report?
Yeah, Dr. Kelly Flores failed to take a vital step of testing for acetaminophen. Testing for acetaminophen could have gave us the exact dosage of acetaminophen, which would have allowed us to extrapolate backwards to what pill Brandon Bamba took, which caused his death.
And you also mentioned reviewing. Did you get a chance to review Pat Santos's police report?
Yes, along with Dr. Kelly for his autopsy and affidavit, I reviewed Pat Santos's police report, the photos he took, and his affidavit.
And what did you find in this police report?
I found that there was a Percocet bottle upstairs.
Now, just for the court, can you define Percocet?
Percocet is a common painkiller given to patients who have severe pain, usually back or leg pain. It's a substance that is part oxycodone and acetaminophen.
Now, Dr. Morgan Lee, one last question. If Brandon Bamba was found dead in his home with access to both oxycodone and Percocet, could you definitively say which of these drugs killed him?
Unfortunately, because we do not know the exact dose of acetaminophen that was in Brandon Bamba's blood, we cannot tell which pill killed Brandon Bamba, the oxycodone found next to him or the Percocet upstairs.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Do the people want to cross-examine?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may.
Now, Dr. Morgan Lee, you were approached by Sam Soto's attorney, correct?
That's correct.
And you're currently being paid for this case?
Yes, as most experts in my fields who are testifying are.
Yes, and you're being paid at a rate of $300 per hour.
That's correct.
And you've reviewed this case for over 30 hours?
That's correct.
So the total would be a total amount of $9,000.
Correct.
So let's look over as to what you reviewed within these 30 hours. You looked at documents, correct?
Correct.
You looked at the affidavits of both Pat Santos and Kelly Flores.
Correct.
You looked at Kelly Flores' autopsy report.
Correct.
So let's talk more on the Kelly Flores autopsy report. You said that you found complications within her autopsy, correct?
That's correct.
The first complication was the presence of alcohol.
Yes, that was a complication, but the main complication was the trace amounts of acetaminophen.
Yes, and we'll get to that. But the first complication, you said that alcohol could possibly amplify oxycodone, correct?
That's correct.
And when amplified, it could kill an adult.
Correct.
So let's move on to the main complication, the acetaminophen. You said it was a huge misstep on her part for not quantitating it.
That's correct.
And to quantitate means to find a specified amount.
Correct.
So even if, and the acetaminophen was in trace amounts, correct?
Correct.
So even if it was quantitated, it would have come to a rather small amount.
That's correct.
I see. So let's move on as to Pat Santos' reports. You reviewed his affidavit. Just to clarify, you reviewed his affidavit?
That's correct.
And you know that there are pills found within Mr. Bomba's house?
Yes, there was 2.
And you're aware of where these pills were?
Yes.
Are you aware that the pill bags found in front of Mr. Bomba contained oxycodone?
That's correct.
Are you aware that the pill baggie found was open?
Correct.
Are you aware that the pill baggie that was found in front of Mr. Bomba was near 5 bottles of alcohol?
That's correct.
Are you aware that the Percocet was found upstairs within a cabinet?
Yes.
Are you aware that the Percocet pill bottle was sealed?
That's correct.
Are you aware that Brandon Bomba was found downstairs on the couch in front of Mr. Bomba's, or in front of the baggie pills?
That's correct.
So, taking the evidence presented, it would have been more likely for Mr. Bomba to take the pills in front of him rather than the one upstairs?
Well, I simply disagree. The only presence of acetaminophen found in this case was the Percocet upstairs. Additionally, with the time-release nature of the pill, it could have been likely that Brandon Bomba took high dosages of Percocet and still have been trace amounts of acetaminophen.
I see. So let's go through as to what you're saying. Mr. Bomba came home from the party and he went upstairs, correct?
That's correct.
He opened his pill cabinet and he took the Percocet pills.
Well, I wasn't there. I can't testify to that.
We're just going through as to what you're possibly saying through your prior evidence that you had recovered.
All right.
So re-asking my question, he opened the pill cabinet and he took the pills from
Objection,
them.
speculation.
You may respond. Your Honor, I'm just simply going through what the witness is testifying here today. I'm going through the step process and having Mr. Morgan Lee imagine the scene that he's using, or the scene that's being presented with the evidence that he himself testified today here in court.
The attorney is asking my witness to testify on things that are not based on the facts of this case. He's asking him to assume what Brandon Bomba would have done when he wasn't there.
May I respond? Your Honor, I'm asking Morgan Lee to go through the argument that he had presented and to test out the likely factor of whether or not he took the pills in front of him or the Percocet pills upstairs. And this helps under the court itself understand any facts or anything at all that could be presented within today's case.
Objections to state. Asking the witness to speculate.
I see, Your Honor. I'll move on. Now, Dr. Morgan Lee, are you aware that Mr. Bomba was heavily intoxicated?
That's correct.
And are you aware of how autopsies are conducted?
Yes.
Are you aware of preliminary measures?
That's correct.
And are you aware that trace amounts only come in when there are less than 5 milligrams found?
Correct.
So it was possible that Mr. Bomba could have taken the Percocet pills prior to the July 4th party, correct?
It's possible, yes.
See, no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Do you wish to redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may.
Dr. Lee, just 2 questions. Does preliminary testing tell us which pill Brandon Bomba took?
No, unfortunately, preliminary testing only gives what substances were found in the blood.
And are preliminary tests always 100% accurate?
While preliminary tests can find the substances, it doesn't give us the dosage or the source of the pill.
No further questions, Your Honor.
First, please step down from the stand.
Your next witness.
Your Honor, Your Honor, the defense would like to call Taylor Garcia to the stand.
Taylor Garcia, please report to the stand.
The witness has been sworn.
Good evening. Could you please state your name for the record?
My name is Taylor Garcia.
And Ms. Garcia, did you know Brandon Bamba?
Yes, we met back at school. We were friends. We'd hang out every summer.
And did you know Sam Soto?
Kind of. He was a friend of Brandon's, so you could consider us acquaintances.
And Ms. Garcia, did you recently come back to Guam?
Yes, about over a year ago, I moved back to Guam. I initially moved away to become a ski patrol in Colorado because of my love of nature, but I moved back to pursue a career in accounting.
Okay, thank you. And now, Ms. Garcia, were you present at this past year's 4th of July party?
I was, yes.
Okay. And who invited you to this party?
I was invited by Brandon.
Okay. Now, Ms. Garcia, did you observe anything about Brandon's interactions that night?
Yes, he was erratic, just all over the place. I mean, messing around with the cocktail sauce on his shirt, talking to guests, almost pestering them. He seemed just irresponsible and just all over the place, really.
Now, Ms. Garcia, is this your first interaction with Brandon Bamba?
No, I met back up with him closer to when I initially moved back.
Could you please recount more of that event?
Well, I had contacted him when I moved back because I missed hanging out with him. And we agreed that we were going to go to a bar to watch sports, and then we were going to head to a concert afterwards.
And what did you observe about Brandon whilst at the bar?
Well, he was super late upon arrival. I mean, that was not the Brandon that I had known, and he seemed to be already under some sort of influence.
Did he drink a lot that night?
Yeah, he was slugging beer after beer. I mean, he was so drunk and he kept saying that, this was only the beginning and you haven't seen what's next kind of things.
And after this, where did you go?
Well, I said that I would drive us because it seemed terribly irresponsible to allow him to drive himself. So I took us to the concert.
What happened at the concert?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
I am using this witness's backstory to provide a relevant connection to the decedent Brandon Bamba, and I'm also using it to prove history of Brandon Bamba's habits and actions.
If I may respond, Your Honor. This concert took place how many or so years ago, and the prejudicial value of painting the picture of Brandon Bamba's image as such from Taylor Garcia's testimony has more prejudicial value than it does probative value to this case, considering Brandon is not here to testify to the actions of the concert, and the witness is testifying for his drug history.
Your Honor, may I respond? I do not believe that the prejudicial effect outweighs the probative value here. The witness is simply testifying to an event that they had observed, and these are all of the things that they had observed directly about the witness. They are not, the decedent, they are not making any direct claims as to the effect that this may have today.
If I may be heard, Your Honor, the testimony is that the witness is doing exactly what opposing counsel says it's not. It's establishing that Brandon is in fact this erratic and sporadic drug addict that drinks heavily. And I argue that the prejudicial value of painting his picture as such is prejudicial, Your Honor.
I stand by my argument, Your Honor.
How long ago was the concert?
It was about a year ago, Your Honor.
Are you seeking to introduce this as habit evidence?
Yes, Your Honor, if the witness were allowed to continue testifying.
Your Honor, if I may be heard, this event did not take place 1 year ago. In fact, a couple of years ago, in accordance with the affidavit of Taylor Garcia.
I find that this evidence does not satisfy the definition of habit. And the objection is sustained.
Thank you, Your Honor. Move to strike all testimonies regarding this.
I'll strike the testimony beginning with the bar, but her prior testimony is still in the record.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Garcia, I'll move back to the 4th of July party that you had attended. Now, you had stated that you had observed some of Brandon Bomba's interactions, but did you observe any of the interactions with Sam Soto that night?
I did. I saw what seemingly was an argument between the two of them. It seemed like Brandon was
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation. The witness is testifying to what she thinks happened between Brandon and Sam. However, it could not be she cannot testify to the actuality of the events of that night, Your Honor.
May I respond, Your Honor?
You may.
The witness has not made any specific claims or statements about the exactments of the argument that was held. She's simply stating that there was an argument held. And as a late witness, she is also allowed to give her own opinion about the direct events that she observed.
The objection's overruled. You may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you like me to restate the question?
Yes, please.
Did you observe anything about Sam Soto's interactions that night?
I did. I saw Brandon and Sam seemingly have some sort of disagreement. It seemed like Brandon had been pestering Sam for something, and Sam had denied him of whatever he was asking for.
And what did you observe Brandon do after this?
I saw him exit that conversation, but talk to a close friend of Sam's.
And then what did Brandon do?
I saw him exit to the bathroom. He kind of made like a beeline.
And did you happen to use this bathroom after Brandon Bomba?
I did. Later into the evening, I had developed a pretty bad headache because of the noise of the party, and I had gotten cocktail sauce all over my hands.
And what had you observed in the bathroom?
When I entered the bathroom, all over the countertop of the sink were scattered pills, like someone had been rummaging around in them.
Can you briefly describe what the pills looked like?
They were just pills, really.
Okay, thank you. And this was was this after Brandon Bomba had exited the restroom?
Yes.
And did you observe anyone else use that restroom?
No.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Permission to cross this witness, Your Honor.
You may.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Garcia, I'd like to clarify a few points from your earlier testimony. Now, you said you've known Brandon for many years. Is that correct?
Yes, since high school.
And Brandon did invite you to Sam Soto's 4th of July party. Is that correct?
Yes, he did.
And however, you didn't know Sam Soto before this event. Is that correct?
I did not.
Right. And so at the party, you noted that Brandon was drinking heavily that night. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And you even witnessed an interaction between Sam and Brandon. Is that right?
Yes.
And during this interaction, you saw how Sam expressed concern from what Brandon had asked. Is that right?
It seemed like he was saying no, like telling Brandon to
And
go,
after
like-
this conversation, Brandon continued mingling with other guests, right, Ms. Garcia?
Yeah.
And so fast forwarding at the party, you saw Brandon enter a bathroom. Is that right, Ms. Garcia?
Yes.
And you thought he was going to clean a stain off his shirt. Is that right?
Yeah, he had this like pretty big cocktail sauce stain on his shirt.
However, Ms. Garcia, when he came back, he still had that stain on his shirt. Is that right?
Yeah, he didn't wash it off, I don't think.
So you don't know exactly what Brandon did in that bathroom. Is that correct?
No.
So the reason you yourself would go into that very same bathroom that night, is that correct?
Could you please ask your question?
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative.
He's going to rephrase the question.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You yourself would go use this very same bathroom. Is that right?
Yes.
And when you had entered, you noticed there was pills scattered all over the sink. Is that right, Ms. Garcia?
Yeah, like someone had been rummaging around in them.
And you couldn't identify these pills. Is that right?
No, I'm no expert on that.
Right. And you didn't tell anyone about these pills?
I mean, it wasn't my house and I was getting ready to leave. I
Right.
mean, it wasn't really my business.
Right. And you didn't even tell Miss Soto about these pills. Is that right, Ms. Garcia?
I might have, but I don't recall if I did.
So it's your testimony tonight that you did in fact tell Miss Soto about these pills, Ms. Garcia?
I'm saying I don't remember if I did or not.
Very well. So let's move on. And so the reason you yourself went into this bathroom is because you were in search of Tylenol. Is that right?
Yeah, I had a pretty bad headache.
And Ms. Garcia, were you able to find any Tylenol?
I can't remember if I did or not. I just remember leaving the restroom after finding the pills.
And you didn't ask Miss Soto to go ahead and search her bathroom for Tylenol beforehand. Is that right?
No, we were only acquaintances. I wasn't really close with her. I just felt kind of uncomfortable to
That's
approach
because
her
you
like
had no
that.
personal relationship. That's right, Ms. Garcia. And Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Thank you. Do you wish to redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Garcia, I just have two brief questions. What caught your attention about Brandon's behavior that night?
He was, I don't know how else to describe it other than erratic. I mean, he was just so not
Objection, Your
himself.
Honor. This is beyond the scope of my cross-examination.
I'll allow the question. You may.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Would you continue your answer? Or would you like me to restate the question?
Could you please restate the question?
Of course. Now, what caught your attention about Brandon's actions that night?
He was erratic, just not the Brandon that I had known for so long. He was pestering people, almost annoying in a way.
And had you observed these behaviors before?
No, that was not the Brandon that I had known. I had known him to be extroverted and talkative, but not in a way that would be off-putting to others.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Do you have anything for
No, Your Honor.
the witness may step down? Thank you.
Taylor Garcia, please step down from the stand.
Does the defendant have any other witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor, the defense would like to call Ms. Sam Soto to the stand.
Sam Soto, please report to the stand.
Before you begin, I have a question. I have a question for the defendant. You understand that you are the defendant in this case?
Yes, Your Honor.
You understand you have a right to remain silent?
Yes, Your Honor.
Nothing you say can be used against you?
Yes, Your Honor.
Are you waiving the right to remain silent?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Can you please state your name for the jury?
Good evening. My name is Sam Soto.
And did you know the deceased, Mr. Bamba?
Yes, I did.
How did you know Brandon?
Well, me and Brandon were really good friends. I've known him since college. We've known each other for over 20 years, and he was one of my best friends. He was like a brother to me.
What was Brandon like in the early stages of your friendship?
Well, like I mentioned, me and Brandon had met in college. He was always a super extroverted guy, and I was almost kind of jealous of him for how good he was with people. I wanted to be a part of his circle of friends, so I kind of went out with them partying, and we partied quite a bit.
And did you and Brandon stay connected after college?
Yes, thankfully, him and I actually ended up passing our CPA exam together on the first try and ended up at Lewis and Tully with an internship together.
And what was it like working with Brandon?
Well, accounting is a stressful job. Anyone can testify to that. And I guess I think it got to Brandon. He was always really stressed out.
Can you elaborate on that, Ms. Soto?
Well, I found out that he'd actually been trying to find a way to take the edge off, I guess, and had resorted to things like opioids.
And was this a problem for Brandon?
Well, originally I had believed he was just taking one or two to kind of, after a long day, to relieve the stress, but I'd realized it turned into a problem for him. I actually know that he was at Wayfair Rehabilitation for maybe 6 years ago.
And did Brandon show an interest in drugs following his time at rehab?
Well, yes. He actually, on the 4th of July, was talking to me, and he was talking to some of our guests, asking them about opioids and how they felt about it, if they faced any consequences of taking it, and all of these different things about it. And then he came up to me and he asked me if I had any oxycodone.
Now, Ms. Soto, I would like to move into the events that occurred at your 4th of July party. Do you recall seeing Brandon Bamba on the night of the 4th?
Yes.
And how would you describe his behavior?
Well, Brandon was an outgoing guy, like I said, and we'd hosted these parties so many times before that I just let him be him. But he was being weird. He was pestering my guests. He was bothering them. At one point, I had to tell him to knock it off because I didn't want him to ruin the reputation he had built for himself.
Did you see Brandon drinking at this party?
Well, I do recall it was kind of a hot day that day, and most of our guests were drinking water. Not Brandon, though. He was drinking a lot of alcohol.
Now, Ms. Soto, did you talk to Brandon any time after you warned him about bothering guests?
Well, yes, him and I had kind of gotten into an argument. After he asked me about the oxycodone, I reminded him about all of the progress he had made at rehab. I didn't want my best friend to fall back into his old habits and abuse opioids, so I was reminding him about all of that, and then he kind of just sauntered off.
Now, did Brandon have access to any other part of your house?
Yes, all of my guests had access to most of my house. A lot of these people had been really good friends after all the years I'd hosted these parties, so I trusted them.
Did he have access to your bathroom?
Well, yes, everyone had access to my bathroom, my master bathroom, my guest bathrooms.
Did you see him visit the restroom at any point?
Well, yes, I saw him go into my master bathroom, I believe.
And did you have anything stored in this bathroom?
Well, I keep my prescription drugs in the medicine cabinet in the bathroom, in the master bathroom. Yeah.
And Ms. Soto, when was the last time you saw Brandon?
Well, because him and I had hosted the parties most of the time. I'm sorry. I saw him at the end of the party. He was one of the last people to leave. He always made sure to talk to all of his guests and made sure to show face. So he left maybe around 11. Skylar, his wife, was driving, so I wasn't worried about him driving home as I saw him drink a lot that night.
And two more questions, Ms. Soto. How did you find out Brandon died?
Oh, well, like I mentioned, Skylar had called me and she let me know that he had passed away. And then I found out that on the news he had died of some sort of drug overdose. And I remembered all the times that he had talked about it at the party, and I felt awful. I was grieving my best friend.
Now, for my final question, Ms. Soto, did you give Brandon Bomba any kind of pills on the night of July 4th?
No, I would never do something like that. I told you he was my best friend. I was worried about him. I wouldn't do that to him.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honors.
Do you want to cross-examine the witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may.
Good evening, Ms. Soto. Now, over the years, you and Brandon hosted social gathering events, correct?
Well, yes, since we were accountants, we did like to show face for our,
And clients were invited, right?
yes.
And over the years, you gotten closer to those attending your party.
Yes, actually, over the courses of all the different events from like ball games.
I see.
ball
And you
contests.
went close enough that you guys would talk about your chronic pain.
Well, during the time of the parties, we actually we'd gotten pretty close. I'd known a lot of the people there.
So that would be
and-
yes.
Yes, please let her finish her answer.
Oh, yes, Your Honor. I believe that the witness had answered my question, and she is just using dilatory tactics to stall time, Your Honor.
Let her complete her answer before you ask your next question.
Yes, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, could you restate the question?
And over the years, you got to close enough to talk about your chronic pain, correct?
Yes, we had talked about, I was on a lot of medication. I suffered from an accident early on in my life. So we were talking about how we hurt and stuff like that. Yes.
I see. And you compared your treatments and medications with each other.
Yes, we did. We would compare what worked for us and what our doctors were prescribing us since we face different kinds of pain. And
I see. And you would even personally give away your own medications, correct?
well, during that time when we would talk about our chronic pains and we were comparing our medications, yes, we would give them to one another to try, maybe like a pill or two, but it was only really to see how it worked
I
for
see.
us.
And these were your prescription medications, correct?
Yes, I do admit they were my prescription medication. However, it was only maybe 1 or 2 pills.
And prescription meaning that only you were supposed to be taking these types of pills, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. I believe this line of questioning falls under Rule 404B, previous bad acts. I believe that the attorney is attempting to use propensity to prove the fact that that Sam Soto could have given Brandon Bomba drugs on the night of July 4th.
Your Honor, may I respond? Under Rule 404B2, permitted uses of character evidence, it is to prove identity. I am simply using identity to identify the defendant in regards to her, in regards to her character in passing out her own pills to her guests.
The exception in Rule 404 applies and the objection is overruled.
Thank
may
you, Your
proceed.
Honor. And you would even give your own prescribed medications, correct?
Yes, well, like I said, these are
Mhm.
all adults and we only ever gave 1 or 2 pills before yet.
I see, Miss Soto. But are you a doctor?
No, I am not.
So you gave away your drugs illegally, correct?
Well, I mean, I assume so.
I see. Now moving on, it was your testimony that you were taking different medications.
Yes, I was taking many. After my accident in my earlier years out of the military, I ended up gaining a lot more pain, so my doctor was prescribing me a lot of different medication.
And you move your pills into pill bags, correct?
Yes, I found that with so many medications that I was taking, that it was just better to organize my pills that way.
I see. And you no longer had the bottles for them, right?
No, I would write the tracking numbers of the bottles on a piece of tape on my bags to keep them, but I guess they don't track those, so
I
yeah.
see. And which would mean that only you would know what type of pill were in each bag.
Well, it's more like I assume so then, yes.
And you also refill your pills early, right?
Yes, I do. I don't like to wait till I need to refill them because my back pain is so chronic that if I were to, it'd be almost debilitating.
I see. So you would have more than you would actually need, right?
Well, I wouldn't say it was more than I would actually need. I did have more than my prescribed amount in certain times, but I did need them because I tried to make sure
I
that I
see.
didn't run the clock out.
And so you would have more than your actual prescribed amount, correct?
Well,
As you stated?
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered. This witness has already testified to that.
Oh, Your Honor, I'm just simply clarifying for the court whether or not she had more of her prescribed pills than needed.
The objection is sustained.
I see, Your
Move
Honor.
on to another question.
And your pill bags were in your medicine cabinet?
Yes, I keep them in my medicine cabinet.
And was this cabinet ever locked?
I don't recall.
You don't recall your own medicine cabinet being locked?
No, I can't remember. I'm sorry.
I see. And so and then moving on. You also bought a lockbox, correct?
Yes, I did buy a lockbox following Brandon's death. I was worried that if someone had stolen my pills, that they would be able to do something like that again. And I bought the lockbox to ensure something like that would never happen.
I see. And Ms. Soto, you talked about the possibility of someone taking your pills. Was this because your cabinet was unlocked?
Well, I would assume that if someone had really put their mind to it, they could have gotten into my medicine cabinet and they could have stolen my pills. So I was more worried that the possibility was there.
I see. So you took the precaution to secure your
Objection, Your Honor.
medications.
I'd like to object under Rule 407, subsequent remedial measures, which cannot be used to prove negligence in this case, which is what I believe this attorney is attempting to do with the lockbox.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
Under that same rule, it could be admitted to prove feasibility of precautionary measures. I'm simply just introducing this evidence to show that Sam Soto had the feasibility to lock up her own cabinet, and which would have been the precautionary measures as stated in 407.
The objection sustained. Rules 407 applies.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Move on to another subject, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Officer Pat Santos conducted a search of your home, right?
Yes,
And he collected evidence.
I believe so.
I see. And this was your lockbox, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, outside of the scope, this witness would not know what Officer Pat Santos took into evidence and what he did not.
Your Honor may respond. I believe that the witness had testified that she had knowledge of Officer Pat Santos conducting a search of her home and the contents of the lockbox, Your Honor.
The objection is overruled. You may answer the question.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, he collected evidence, correct?
Like I said, I believe he collected evidence.
And this was the lockbox.
I'm not too sure what evidence he collected. I'm aware he did collect it though.
I see. And speaking of your lockbox, you moved your pill bags to this lockbox, correct?
Yes, following finding out about Brandon's death, I did move them.
I see. And these were the same same pill bags from that unlocked cabinet, right?
Well, these are the same pill bags from my medicine cabinet.
I see. Now moving on. Your Honor, may I retrieve what has been marked for identification purposes as Exhibit 10? Now, Ms. Soto, this is a photograph of your pills, your pill bag that was found in your home and the pill bag found in Mr. Bomba's home. Could you please circle?
Objection, Your Honor, lack of personal knowledge. Ms. Soto was not there when Pat Santos conducted the investigation, and she's not aware of any evidence that was collected from Brendan Bomba's home.
Your Honor, may I respond? I believe she does have knowledge of her own pill bags, and I'm just simply clarifying for the jury whether or not she can identify her own pill bag between those two.
Then you need to ask it that way.
Oh, yes, Your Honor, I was gonna clarify.
Objection sustained, but you may rephrase your question.
I see. Now, Ms. Soto, could you please mark which of your pill bags is yours in that document?
I'm not too sure if these ones are mine.
Again, Your Honor, outside the scope, the witness has not seen these pills prior to today, and she didn't even know that these were collected from the deceased's home.
She answered the question. Your objection is overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, you can identify your own pills.
I'm not for sure if these ones are mine, no.
I see. And again, you moved your pills into these pill bags, correct?
I moved my pills into, yes, I did move them into the pill bags.
And it's now hard to identify which of those two are your pill bags.
Well, I moved them into.
Objection, argumentative.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, between those pill bags, could you please show the court? Please lift up the exhibit and show the court. Now, these two pill bags, they look similar to you?
Well, they are in plastic baggies, which I know are common, and I assume because I also use plastic baggies that they look similar, sure.
I see. And again, you were aware that one of these two pill bags were yours?
No.
And you're not aware that you can't identify your own pill bags?
Like I said, I'm not sure if these ones are mine.
Now let's move on. Let's move on to the July 4th party in 2024. Now, Brandon was drinking that night, correct?
Yes.
And he was asking a lot about oxycodone, correct?
Yes, he was.
And you're familiar with the drug?
Yes.
You take it for your back pain?
Yes.
And he even asked you for some, correct?
He did.
But you didn't give him drugs, correct?
No, of course not.
That you didn't cause your own friend's death, right?
I would never.
I see. But he is dead now, correct?
Yes.
And he was found the day after your party?
Yes, he was.
I see. And he was found the day after he had asked you for drugs?
Yes.
I see. And the same drugs that were in your restroom?
I don't know if they were the same drugs that were in my restroom. I mean, I'm not too sure.
And earlier in your direct examination, you did say it's a possibility that Brandon had taken some of your drugs in your restroom, correct?
I think that if Brandon had really put his mind to it, he could have stolen my drugs from me, yes.
I see. And so that would mean that he could have taken your drugs, correct?
He could have stolen them, yes.
I see. And the restroom that was unlocked, right?
Yes.
Now, let's get a few things straight, Miss Soto. You knew of Brandon's addiction.
I did.
But you didn't lock away your oxycodone.
Well,
Again, Your Honor, I would like to object under Rule 407, subsequent remedial measures cannot be used to prove negligence.
Your Honor, once again, under that same rule, the subsection there states that I can admit this into evidence as it's for the feasibility of precautionary measures. I'm simply asking the witness, she knew of Brandon's addiction. Would that have prompted her to have locked her medication? which the witness had answered so.
I'll allow the question, but there will be limiting instruction given by the court on the use of answer.
I see. But you didn't lock away your oxycodone despite knowing his addiction, correct?
Well, I knew he was an addict previously, but after he went to Wayfair and how, I guess like careful he was around oxycodone, I wasn't worried about him. So no, I didn't lock it away.
I see. And you knew he was heavily drinking that night, correct?
Yes.
But you still didn't lock away your oxycodone?
Asked and answered, Your Honor.
Your Honor, may I respond? The context of my question is different from the previous question. The previous question is whether or not she locked the oxycodone despite knowing his addiction. This is following in regards to that she knew that he was drinking. Would have she locked up her oxycodone?
I don't believe that's what you asked, so you may rephrase your question.
I see. But you didn't lock away your pills that were in that unlocked cabinet, correct?
Like I stated before, I didn't lock them up. And also, if we're talking about his drinking, I mean, I wasn't babysitting him. I was hosting my party, so no, I didn't go to my bathroom.
But Brandon did ask you for oxycodone that night, correct?
Again, asked and answered, Your Honor.
Sustained.
I see, I'll move on. And despite him asking for oxycodone, you still didn't lock away your drugs, correct?
No, because I had deterred him away from it, and he had seemed pretty, understanding.
I see. And Miss Soto, can you verify the amount of pills you had on July 4th?
No, I can't. Like I mentioned, I refill before my actual refill date is, so I don't know how many pills I had.
I see. Thank you, Miss Soto. Your honors, no further questions.
Your Honor, permission to redirect?
You may.
Now, Ms. Soto, earlier in your testimony on cross-examination, you talked about giving out a pill once or twice. The people that you gave out a pill to before, were they addicts?
No, they weren't. Like I said, they were people who were also experiencing chronic pain, and they were just, yeah.
Did you give Brandon Bamba any pills after his time in rehab?
Objection leading.
Objections over.
I'm sorry, could you ask the question again?
Yes. Did you give Brandon Bamba any pills after his time in rehab?
No, of course not. Like I said, I deterred him away from it when he asked me. I wouldn't do that to him.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Your Honor, may I recross?
Yes.
May I ask how much time I have left? May I proceed?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honors. Now, you testified again that you didn't give away drugs to, you only gave drugs to those that were in chronic pain, correct?
Like I mentioned, it was only to the people at my party who we had been talking about it, who had also been experienced stuff like that. So we had tried one another's pills, yes.
I see. And in your direct, you did say that Brandon was pretty stressed, correct?
I mean, maybe in the beginning of our accounting, which was maybe like 10 years ago. It's been a while.
So you wouldn't give him drugs that night?
I'm sorry, could you clarify on the 4th of July or?
On the 4th of July.
On the 4th of July? No, I wouldn't
I
have given
see.
him drugs.
And he was in chronic pain then, correct?
I remember him mentioning something about his back, but I honestly found it kind of odd because he was just complaining about it, but he hadn't mentioned it to me before.
I see. So Brandon was the only exception for you not to give drugs to him, correct?
Well, like I mentioned before, me and our guests were people who were trusted adults who hadn't been addicts before, and we had been working with each other, talking about our chronic pain. We knew what we were taking, and we were taking it responsibly. Brandon wasn't. He was a previous addict, so yes, he was the exception because I knew that if I gave him pills, he could lead him down a wrong road.
I see. And since you knew that it was safe to not give him pills, you still didn't lock up your own unlocked restroom, correct?
I'm so sorry. Could you repeat the question?
Since you knew that it was safe to not give Brandon drugs that night, you didn't think it was not safe to lock up your own cabinet.
Well, I knew that it was safe to not give Brandon drugs, yes, but like I mentioned before, I thought that he was, I thought he was responsible still. Just because he was responsible doesn't mean I would give him drugs as an addict, but I also wouldn't pin him as someone to steal something from me like that.
I see. Your honors, no further questions.
With that, Your Honor, the defense rests its case.
Thank you. The witness may step down.
Sam Soto, please step down from the stand.
In a real trial at this time, the court would give a limiting instruction regarding the 407 evidence, but I won't do that tonight. At this time, we'll take a 10-minute recess so you can prepare your closing arguments. Court is in recess. The court is back in session, and we come to the final part of the competition, which is the closing argument by each party. And we'll begin. I'm sorry, I'm not clear from the rules. Do you do rebuttal or do you just do one argument?
Yes, Your Honor, any remaining time.
It
in
can be
closing.
used for rebuttal. Okay,
Yes, Your Honor.
thank you. Then we'll begin with the prosecution.
Yes, Your Honor, before I begin, may I retrieve Exhibit 10 from the bailiff?
You may.
Thank you. When we were kids, we learned to see medication as a source of comfort, something carefully managed to help us recover. But it's care and responsibility that make medication safe. What happens when the very thing that's meant to protect us becomes the source of our pain? That's what we're faced here today, a tragic reminder that when managed irresponsibly, medication can kill. At the beginning of this trial, we told you there would be no twists and no turns. The facts are as simple as they are tragic. Brandon Bomba died from two things: the oxycodone that causes overdose and the negligence of his friend, Sam Soto. May it please the court. As the prosecution, we had the burden of proving to you, beyond a reasonable doubt, that on July 4th, 2024, Sam Soto approximately caused death by directly or indirectly unlawfully giving away or exchanging oxycodone. We had asked that you hold us to an appropriate burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. That doesn't mean proof beyond all doubts, and tonight we have more than just met this burden. As the defense told you tonight, Brandon Bomba had a long history of addiction to substances, one that was well known to those close to him. On the other hand, Sam Soto had a long history of chronic pain, to which he ascribed pain medication such as oxycodone. On the night of July 4th, 2024, Sam Soto's negligence would be on full display. Brandon, overcome with his addiction, again sought after oxycodone, moving from guest to guest, engaging in conversation about the drug. And after being under the influence of alcohol the entire day, Brandon would approach Sam for oxycodone. In response, knowing her friend had been heavily drinking, knowing her friend had a history of substance abuse, knowing that in her home she had the very drugs that Brandon was after, Sam Soto did nothing. The defendant had all the signs to have the heightened awareness to secure medication from a vulnerable and recovering drug addict, but failed. You heard from Officer Pat Santos tonight tell you that the baggie of pills found in Brandon's home and the baggie of pills found in Sam's home were identical. From the baggie to the dosage to the strange markings used to label these pills had matched. Your Honors, when you have this much similarity, it no longer becomes a coincidence. These are the same pills from the same source, Sam Soto's home. You heard from Sam Soto and Alex King that Sam Soto's parties was a place where prescription drug trade was encouraged. Now we know that it wasn't just Alex King that received pills, because other guests received as well. Your Honors, if Taylor Garcia, someone who has no relation to Sam Soto at all, felt comfortable enough to rummage through Miss Soto's medicine cabinet, who knows what more Brandon could have done, Miss Soto's best friend. Now, regardless if the defendant had known about Brandon's actions or not, in her negligence, left her prescription pills so easily accessible with no regard to whether her friend with a long-time drug addiction could have taken them from her. Now, you heard from the defendant tonight tell you that Brandon had access to the only place on 4th of July that the pills were accessible. And that is why she's the proximate cause for Brandon acquiring the pills that led to his death. Now, Your Honors, the defense has tempted you to wonder about things that are irrelevant. But are we really to believe the defendant when she herself can't recall if her medicine cabinet was locked? When she can't recall how much pills she was in possession of at night? Your Honors, if she can't remember that, what does she know? Now, this case is simple as it is tragic. We find that you will find the only just verdict in a simple saying: actions speak louder than words. And tonight, it'll come down to the government's actions versus the defendant's words. We find that you will find Sam Soto guilty of manslaughter. Thank you.
Thank you. The defendant?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed with my closing argument?
You may.
Thank you. Before I begin, I'd like to make a statement to the court, to the honors, to the jury, to opposing counsel, that negligence is not a part of the case here today. The charge here is manslaughter, a charge that is being thrown at an innocent woman, Sam Soto, who herself testified on that stand on the very verge of tears under threat of perjury that she would never hurt her dear friend, Brandon Bamba, and that is no more evident than in here in today's case. But first, I'd like to review for the court what exactly the prosecution has to prove. They bear the burden of proof, which means that they must show beyond a reasonable doubt that Sam Soto is guilty. Beyond a reasonable doubt, meaning that there is no other reasonable explanation for the evidence brought here today in court. However, there is more than one count of reasonable evidence. The prosecution's case is inconsistent. Their witnesses are irresponsible, and their conclusions are incomplete. And here's every reason why. First, the inconsistencies. Alex King, who would have been a key witness, having an alleged firsthand account of the alleged passing of bags at the 4th of July party on 2024, unfortunately was so intoxicated that he himself had chosen not to drive home. If they were so intoxicated that they couldn't drive themselves home, then who's to say that they were able to properly identify bags being passed across the room at a very busy party? Additionally, Alex King testified that they had brought coffee beans to the party. So who's to say that the bag being passed wasn't a bag of coffee beans? That's doubt, reasonable doubt. Next, I'd like to talk about some of the inconsistencies, the irresponsibilities present in today's case. One of the more glaring issues here is the irresponsibility of Dr. Kelly Flores, a doctor who did not properly quantify the amount of acetaminophen found in Brandon Bamba's body. They had quantitatively tested for the oxycodone and the alcohol, but a third potential key component was left out. So who's to say that the acetaminophen couldn't have played a larger role in the death of Brandon Bamba? We will never know. And unfortunately, I do not believe that that makes enough of a case to send an innocent woman to prison. Additionally, Officer Pat Santos was irresponsible in his ability to properly fill out the investigation report. He did not thoroughly account for either the investigation in Sam Soto's home or his interview with Dr. Kwan. Additionally, he did not get thorough DNA evidence off of the bag of oxycodone pills. However, there was DNA evidence of Brandon Bamba's DNA on the prescription bottle of Percocet found in his upstairs bathroom. And lastly, the incompleteness. I've already said some of it here before, but I'll say it again. Officer Pat Santos's incompleteness of his investigation report, the sole investigator, the man tasked with the responsibility of providing some of the first-hand key evidence of the death of Brandon Bamba, could not even complete his job to the bare minimum thorough extent. Sam Soto stands trial here today. She stands trial an innocent woman who, again I say, under threat of perjury, has testified that she would never hurt her dear friend Brandon Bamba, and if found guilty, she would be liable to potentially 25 years in jail or a $40,000 fine, an exorbitant sum of money for a woman who has done nothing wrong and has graciously come here today, waiving her Fifth Amendment rights as granted by the United States Constitution, and proclaimed before the entire court because she believed that she had facts that would change the state of the case, which they did. They showed that the prosecution's case is unreliable and does not meet the burden of proof and does not provide enough evidence to send her to jail. Your Honors, viewers, both here and at home, opposing counsel and co-counsel, amidst the facts and evidence presented today, the only one who is here to prove anything is the prosecution, their sole responsibility, and unfortunately, it seems that they have fallen short of this goal. As such, through the collection of statements that I have given you here today, both from co-counsel, from the witnesses, and from opposing counsel, we, the defense, believe that Sam Soto cannot be found guilty for the charge of manslaughter through direct or indirect action. Thank you.
Do you have any rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor, but before I do so, may I request a time check?
You may proceed.
A minute ago, the defense had a chance to address you all and tell you how our case today is irresponsible, inconsistent, and incomplete. However, this is to divert your attention from the fact that there are some hard-hitting facts in this case. There was no signs of acetaminophen abuse, meaning the only cause of death was oxycodone. The only place that Brandon could have acquired the baggie of pills that he overdosed on was from Sam Soto's home. And the only place that these pills were accessible on the night of July 4th was Brandon Bamba's bathroom. Sam Soto's bathroom, which the defendant had obviously stated could have been a possibility. We argue that Brandon Bomba's death was indirectly caused by Sam Soto because the fact is Brandon Bomba died from Sam Soto's pills. The defense cannot dispute the fact that the pills found next to Brandon's home was Sam Soto's. And we still ask that you find Sam Soto guilty of manslaughter. Thank you.
At this time, the court will recess to discuss who will prevail tonight. But I understand that Mr. Olean's going to explain some activity for the teams while we're doing that. Thank you.
Just like every trial, now's the time that your teams could meet, obviously, to choose the star witness and star attorney from your opposing team. Okay, and then of course, the panel will go out and deliberate, give their scores. And so while we're waiting, and you're taking care of that, the other thing is, what was I going to mention? Oh, if anyone needed to take a break. Okay. We know what happens next, right? So, but because we are at finals, there's a slight difference. So what happens, of course, they'll return. We'll ask them if you can exchange and do your star witness and star attorney presentation. And then after that, they'll proceed with either the outstanding attorney and outstanding witness, the judge's choice. And as you know, throughout this whole mock trial, every judge from each trial that you participate in, they select outstanding attorney and witness, and those add up, and at of course, the very end, whoever has the highest scores at the very end is awarded the overall outstanding attorney and the overall outstanding witness at the awards ceremony. And this time it will be in either February or March, because we're hoping this is going to be more of our mock trial season. We'll start in the fall. And so, of course, last season we did it in in the spring, winter, spring, here in Guam, winter, spring, breezy season. And then, so after that point, of course, they'll announce the winner. And I did want to say, obviously, very much congratulations to both of you. Just the audience will agree, right? Even at home, you're just amazing. These teams are, the students are amazing. But of course, they would not be in these positions without the wonderful dedication and commitment and time from the teacher coaches and the attorney coaches. So please. And last but not least, parents, right? Parents, your time, your energy, your love, and all that you give to your wonderful kids. I'm so emotional right now. I'm just like, oh my gosh, my mom almost emotional. Anyway, to all the time that you give to your children to participate in these types of valuable experiences. So big round of applause for our parents and families. So just know, of course, we can only have one champion tonight, and that will be determined by the scores. But the first runner-up is obviously still very much a winner and a finalist. And if for any reason that the champion team is unable to go to the national competition in May, from May 8th to the 10th in Phoenix, Arizona, the first runner-up team would automatically have the first option to attend in their place, for whatever reasons that a team, may or may not be able to attend. Second, after that, what happens is when they're awarded, we had, where'd that thing go? Where'd the award go? It's somewhere here. Oh, sorry, he's probably like, this thing is in my way. Okay, sorry. So the award, at least, we'll have it at the very end for the champion team. That is our perennial mock trial award. It's a beautiful EFIT Laddie Stone. And then on the backside later at the award ceremony, it will have the team champion name, of course, and the year on it. And then after that, we would like, of course, to have the opportunity for both teams to take photos with the panel, with yourselves, your families, what have you. Please note that we do want to capture photos because we do have our PIO here, Public Information Officer, Jeanette, is here with us so that she can also memorialize it and that, we can share it as well in all of our, media release as well. Okay, so I hope that explains the program for the rest of the evening. Thank you for your patience. We're almost there.
Not now.
We don't know the scores. They're being tallied, so we wanted to take a few minutes with you before we know the answer. First of all, I'd like to recognize some people that I didn't prior to this. Could I ask the coaches for the Guam High School to please stand? Could you just say your names, please? Thank you. And for Okadu? Thank you. Great.
Oh,
Thank
excellent.
you. I'd like to ask everyone to give a round of applause recognizing we had a brief discussion, and we have to say we're very impressed with all the hard work you've obviously put in during the last several months. And we really hope this program has taught you a lot of lessons, some about the law, but also about the discipline and hard work it takes to participate in a program like this. And we're very conscious of how hard you worked, how disciplined you were, what you put into this, and very impressed. Sometimes we say it's almost scary to see you guys perform because you do such a great job. And again, we would encourage you to consider a legal career. If you've enjoyed this program and you've liked what you've participated in, and to encourage you. A lot of people think law school is too expensive, they can't afford it. But we're fortunate in our region that the University of Hawaii has reached out to do online educations to spare the students of Micronesia and the Marianas from the expense of having to live in Hawaii for 3 years. So once you get your college degree, you can look into those kinds of programs. They're accredited by the bar, and if you succeed in those programs, it's just like an in-person program. You're eligible to take the bar exam and be admitted to practice. So we really encourage you to think about it now that you've had a taste of what it's like. And then we would like to make a few comments. We've been asked to do that. My comment, because I was too busy looking at rules of evidence, is very limited. And it's just sort of I hope you take it as a bit of amusement because you clearly worked hard, but nobody proved this happened in Guam. And that's one of the elements of the case. The devil's in the details, as they say. But in the important things, you guys did great, and I really admire what you accomplished. And now I'd like to give Associate Justice Phil Carbolito an opportunity to say a few things.
Thank you, Justice Merriman. I also want to offer my congratulations to all the participants, and especially the family and the support of the coaches. The effort here was tremendous. I think that's reflective in my score. My score ranged from a 7 to 9 with 110. So I think it's reflective of the caliber of the presentations here, and I want to commend you for that. You know, when you engage and you hopefully we see you as actually practicing attorneys, you generally want to try and see first the forest from the trees. So standing at the 30,000 feet level, this was a very difficult case for the prosecution. You know, you've been taught about direct evidence. There was no evidence of Mr. Soto actually handing the pills to Brandon. That's his name, right?
Yes.
So this whole case of the prosecution relied on circumstantial evidence. That's really tough, you know, in reference to trying to prove the case that the pills were actually given to the victim here through circumstantial evidence. So I recognize that. That's the challenge. And so when you get cases in the future and whoever prevails, we wish you all the best in the nationals. You got to start from, you know, the 30,000 feet level and see how you drill down. But you know, and just in some general comments, I thought the opening statements, they provided a good overview of both sides of the witnesses, their testimony, the evidence, and they introduced the theory of the case. And so I thought that there was a direction that both sides were pursuing when you considered that the nature of the case is that you have to prove the circumstantial evidence in order to establish guilt. I liked it that you outlined the burden of proof, that, you know, you got the prosecution has a burden to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And I think there could have been a better articulation of that standard. And what's very important, Justice Merriman mentioned that one of the critical elements was not proven in the case, but the requested relief, you know, you got to tell the jury what you want. You want to find, the defense wants to find the defendant was not guilty. You got to, and so that was good. I mean, you recognize, you got to articulate, and the prosecution that the evidence supports that the defendant is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And I think for the most part, because I've judged these mock trial finals, and I've seen that, you know, lawyers can get argumentative, and that doesn't really help your case. So for the most part, you know, you kept you kept the questions in a non-argumentative way, which, you know, in a real world will have a positive effect with the jury. And so I like to highlight and emphasize that. In the past, I've seen, you know, questions that and answers that call for unfair extrapolation from your case, just the case facts. And I didn't see any of that tonight. And I think that's a real positive thing. I think the prosecution or those who did the direct examinations, you understood asking questions, open-ended questions. That's how you do direct examinations. You ask your open-ended questions as opposed to cross-examination where you want to lead the witnesses into a yes or no answer. So I think there could have been more of that on cross-examination, you should try and take control of how you want the witness to answer. You should always know how the witness is going to answer. Otherwise, you're not prepared. And so, and if they don't answer it the way you feel that they should have, then you continue to drill down and use the tool of leading questions. And just very quickly, the closing arguments. Closing arguments, you got to incorporate what transpired during the trial. Not what you read in your case notes, not what you read in your binders, but what was actually said out of that witness stand. So when you do a survey of what the evidence is, you have to do a more particular job of what is it that the witnesses testified to and how it fit into your theory of the case. Both sides had theories of their case in reference to both the prosecution and defense, and for the most part, the witnesses stuck to that. And so I think you have a very good understanding of the intricacies of a jury trial, the basic tools of circumstantial, direct evidence, open-ended questions, cross-examination. And so I think you, with further practice, you will be able to emphasize those tools more effectively. But excellent job, quite impressed, and I am happy that I had spent my evening tonight with all of you. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm a trial court judge here. I'm Judge Gutierrez, and I just wanted, not to repeat, because I think Justice Carbolito did a very good job of giving his an overview of what he thought perhaps could be improved. But I'll talk more about demeanor in the courtroom. I do, have hearings almost daily with attorneys here on Island. I want to say that I thought for the most part, all the attorneys and everyone who presented, the witnesses as well, had very good demeanor. I think they were respectful, even when they weren't getting the answers they wanted. There were a couple times, of course, maybe there was some interrupting the witness, but overall, I thought very good demeanor. I think one comment that I want to make, though, is, as you know, when we're sitting up here on the bench and we're looking out, there's a lot of distractions that can occur in the courtroom. And I've judged mock trial in the past. One thing that kind of, I won't say irritates me, but distracts me from hearing what's going on in the courtroom is when the teams are writing notes to each other and passing the notes. I just want to let you know that, we do see what's happening up here. So we would probably just want to give you a little bit of advice to maybe keep that to a minimum and or just be aware of the note passing, because I think it can be distracting to us up here and it takes away from the presentation that's going on in the courtroom. So overall, though, I want to say I'm very impressed. My first time judging a championship round, I am beyond, I think, impressed by what I saw this evening. I think some of the performances here rival the best attorneys we have here appearing in the court. So I really want to commend all of you. I know you worked very hard to get this far. I know how much of a sacrifice it is to practice for mock trial. I see it happening in the courtrooms here during the season. So congratulations to both teams. You both deserve to be here in the finals. And I hope in the future, as both justices stated, we see you here appearing before us, either in the Superior Court or the Supreme Court here on our island. All right. Thank you very much.
About the score and come back. Thank you. Okay, we'd like to begin by asking Okadu High School to announce who they chose as attorney and witness.
The prosecution selects their star attorney to be Andrew Powers.
And your honors, for the prosecution selects Ania Tanaka for star witness.
Okay, and then if Guam High could announce hers.
Your Honor, the defense would like to start by giving our Star Attorney Award to Joseph Ordonez.
So the reason I called that little caucus is the votes are incredibly close. 1 point makes a difference in all 3 categories. So first, I'd like to start with the court recognizes Colleen Conception for the witness. And I hope I say this right. For attorney, the court recognizes Tekal Mucho. So congratulations. And we had to have a tiebreaker because one of us voted for the defense, one of us voted for the prosecution, and that another judge had the total points as a tie, but chose the prosecution. So the winners would be Okadu High School. Congrats. And we'll conclude the evening by hoping to see those of you who are not seniors back again next year. Congratulations to all of you. So we have to do photos. Yeah. Shelter, can you take the down? Can you take this down?
Your Honors, if I can ask you to please present the trophy to the winning team.
Yeah.
So you'll come up here. Jolene, can you have the team come around?
Team Okadu, could you quickly, if you could please.
The team and their coaches.
Sit down. No, we'll stand up. No, Kathy, so they can stand behind us.
If you can, yes, go to the podium, the bench rather, to receive your award.
Honors, you can present the trophy.
Okay.
Yeah. One picture.
No, wait, we're trying to get this someone.
Yeah.
Screen. She's gonna take.
Yeah, we're gonna take pictures and then and then, yeah, let's move that. Let's go ahead and move it. Let's go ahead and take the picture and then we can get.
Can you take this away?
Or put it down. Or put this down.
Shelter. I don't want to touch it.
Let's get close together.
Yes, we go down.
Yeah, that's, if you take it out, that's better.
You gotta be quick. Grabbing a hole.
Is there a captain of the team or?
Senior.
All right here.
That's our boy.
Are the
Yes.
coaches?
Are the coaches are coming up or no?
Yeah, bring coaches.
Coach.
Okay, okay. Okay, congratulations.
Thank you, Miss.
Is that
You have to hold it there.
Okay. Make sure the trophy shows.
Is it balanced, Jeanette? One more person over there.
Yes.
Cue without flash, cue with flash. Ready, 1, 2, 3. Okay, with flash, ready. 1, 2, 3. Oh, shit, you guys have on the flash. Oh, yes, yes. Mr. Didasco. There you go.
I know, Mr. Didasco, you've done it many years before, right? Okay.
Yes.
Fun fact, I don't know how many years in a row, but prior to COVID, Okadu was 3 times, right, in a row. So they were the defending champion last season as well. So then we have the administrator, Mr. Mark and Ms. Flores, right?
Take 2 as well. Ready. 1, 2, 3. Great. Thank you.
Guam High, you ready for, want to take a photo?